Good morning, Spikes. No Lanny this week. I think he's at an Olivia Rodrigo concert in London, England. But instead, we have Stephen Wyatt Danger Bush, SWB, the deadliest player in pre-modern history.
Thanks, Mike. How are you today?
I'm 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 rolling, man. So league standings came out. We are the 1-2. I'm the one. You're the two. My one is purely based on persistence. So if you show up almost every week, you can lace together a lot of 1 and 2 finishes and finish in first.
Amazing. I also have zero three O's. I have a
You
bunch
have
of two
zero
ones.
trios?
A bunch of two ones.
I do have a non-zero number of 3 O's, but I have mostly 2 1s.
So I'm looking at the bracket and I noticed that Lan is in eighth and you are in first.
That is true. My bracket is a murderer's row. So
And I
yeah,
just wonder
even if I get past Lan,
if you had known on Thursday going into the meetup that Lan was going to be the eighth seed, would you have still tried to secure the first seed?
yes.
Yeah? Okay.
Well, here's the thing, right? Um, what am I gonna do? Go pay $16 or whatever and just tank it? I would have just not shown up. But even then, right? Like, what is the final scores? Actually, let me look. I put it on X. Um, the final scores is me
42?
42, you 39. Yeah, I guess if I didn't show up, I would have finished in second. Um,
But then
and
everything else would have been different, but presumably, yeah, you would have
Oh,
finished.
somebody might have. Here's the thing. Then somebody else might have pushed Lan into seventh. That's the problem if I'm not there,
It's
right?
fate.
Because I gate kept Roland or something, right? In our match.
Now, if anybody in the top eight can't make it, then Land gets bumped to seventh seed, and then Land and I play.
Oh, that would be great for me.
But right now, it looks like everyone's in. We will play
So,
at the Upper West Side near the Seinfeld Cafe. Kind of excited about that.
what is the deal with that? Why can't we just play where we've been playing?
I guess it has to do with scheduling and space, but that's what was offered to us, which just means a longer train ride for you and me.
It's a super long train ride, right?
Yeah,
Like we live in the BK. That's
yeah,
on the Upper West, man.
like an
We're the
hour.
It's a bazillion years. My best finish ever was, I think, I lost in the finals of an RCQ there. Famously, I lost in the finals of an RCQ and then said that I cared less that I lost in the finals of that RCQ than I lost to Lanny at a meetup at David
Oh,
Tao's house the same week. Uh, but
I
then
believe
flash
it.
forward,
I
I won the
remember that
next
week.
RCQ.
I was there, yeah. I avenged you that meetup.
Here's the hilarious thing. We had like a three-way tie for first place after the Swiss. So I didn't look at the standings and I stopped the judge. I was just like, look, we all we mostly all played each other, right? In the Swiss, the people who are at the top of the standings don't even use the machine, randomize us for play draw, right? I
Wow.
should have looked at the standings because I was in first going
Hmm.
into the top eight, and I lost the red deck versus combo deck matchup because I went second because he won the roll. If I'd won the roll, I would have won the match, and I would have probably won the RCQ. So, but I literally didn't look at the standings, and I said just randomize us. It's just not, it's more fair because we'd all played each other, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, and so like who cares? Like I took a match off him, he took a match off him. Like it's just completely random,
You think the
you know.
match really comes down to who wins the role?
Oh my God. Like, uh, I mean, are you setting me up? You won the roll against me twice this week.
This does tie in well to our matches in our
So,
tournaments this week.
Tuesday, I was on Elves, you were on Enchantress. Duress Crew data says that's a 70% matchup in favor of Michael J.
Okay.
I had a turn four kill in game one. You won the roll. You turn four opal waved me before I deployed I mean, I had my cards in play, right? But I didn't kill you, right? I just had a Kamal in play. And if I untap, it looks like I'm in really good shape, right? You just killed me. Whatever, you locked me out with opal wave.
Pretty
Uh,
sure I generated 8 mana and cast both Wave and Opalescence on the fourth turn.
Yeah, so I didn't get my fourth turn because I was just like, what am I even supposed to do here? I had a backup survival, but you had Opal Wave, right? So I'm like, this is pointless. Okay. And then on Thursday, You won the roll. I had a mana leak. You played Argothian Enchantress under my mana leak and invalidated my opening hand. Dress Crew has that as a 90% matchup in favor of Michael J. So you beat me on the 70% and the 90% matchup. The more humiliating thing is we did not go to the third game in either match.
The
You
thing is,
2-0'd
if
me both times.
these really came down to the play draw, wouldn't these be closer to 50-50 matchups?
Um, I don't know, man. We're talking about small n. I'm not a professional
Not
mathematician or anything.
either.
But it's small n. The other thing is, I think a lot of the Duress Crew data is probably based on Enchantress decks that didn't have Opal Wave. So, they're that's the other thing.
That's the biggest thing that stands out to me is that the Opal Wave innovation is fairly recent. And if I had shown up with a bunch of elephant grasses and Oath of Druids in those slots, yeah, I probably would have lost to your.
So, like in the replenish versus enchantress match we had, I mean, you invalidated my mana leak, right? But that's whatever. That's whatever. I played a seal of cleansing, which maybe I shouldn't have played. I could have done an interaction that turn instead. But I had all the tools in games 2 and 3. But you just preempted me with in one game you just played like I think you played 3 seals in one turn and then took out my all my enchantments. And then the other game you played double parallax wave. So like I have everything, but now I need to set up a setup before I can play it because you just have like if I play my stuff, you have like the same stuff as me, you know?
Yeah, so my strategy going into that one was if I can establish parallax wave dominance so that either player's opalescence benefits me,
Yeah,
then
so
I can't lose.
and that bore out, right? Also you had a single Sterling Grove in game 2, which I was like, I can play around a single Sterling Grove because I really had everything in both games. I just like
Mhm.
was just a half step behind. And um then I just couldn't play anything, right? Because I'm like, all right, like one strategy is you just play out all your enchantments one at a time. That's not gonna do it here, right? Like you had
Right.
such a powerful mana advantage with your Sarah Sanctum and explorations and wild growths. And so I had to really do it all at once. And then but
Mhm.
it's yeah.
And and likewise, my strategy that game is to do it all at once by establishing such a huge board that when I cast the opalescence, I kill you in one attack.
I think that matters less in pre-modern to get back to your question about who goes first. It mattered a lot in our matchups, but also but you two owed me, right? Like who's even to say if I'm gonna win the game 3 situations on the draw, like um so uh you did 2 owe me in both those matches. But I mean I the RCQ that I lost in the finals
Mhm.
at Hex West was Pioneer. That's probably the most play draw dependent format in Magic right now.
Okay.
So like I literally had I can't remember I can't remember what the fundamental turn was at the time, but I had him dead in both games and he just combo killed me in the before I got like the fourth turn or third turn, whatever it was. And if I had looked at the standings, I mean, like, oh, I was going to go in as first seed. That wouldn't have happened. So, live, learn. We'll look at the standings
So,
before making the ovation to the judge. And also, maybe the judge shouldn't have listened to me. I think that might not be in the rules to be like, just because some Yahoo says that it's more fair for us to randomize rolls in the elimination rounds doesn't mean they should listen to me. So.
is there, looking at the data project, are there any learnings from that or aspects we want to put on how we read those results?
Well, I do think like the one thing that you had pointed out, which I just said, which is a lot of the Enchantress data is based on pre-Opal Wave. We have to take
Yeah.
that with a grain of salt. The other thing I'd say just macro about it is use this as guidelines, but like whatever you think, whatever your local personal experience is, you're gonna often have information that trumps that.
Hmm.
Landy Ho, my very good friend and top 8 opponent, and your good friend also used to get after me in modern because I was just like, I think that affinity is a cakewalk for Burn, like a super easy matchup. And all of the data that was on MTG Goldfish and stuff had affinity at something like over 70%. And I'm like, I'd never lose this matchup. And neither did, my protege at the time, Roman Fusco.
Hmm.
Roman was ended up being the modern champion that year. I made top 8 of the modern championships. We both won multiple RCQs. I got back on the Pro Tour with Burn and um, I'm like, this is a really easy matchup. And the problem is like if people have like from my perspective, Roman's perspective, terrible sideboards, right? Like their burn sideboard data is going into these matchups, and I'm just like, I would just never play any of these cards. Like
Yeah.
I just never play Rest in Peace. When somebody's just like, well, what do you do about graveyard decks? I'm like, I just don't. I choose not to play that week. If if Dredge is the dominant deck, and I'm like dead set on playing burn, I'm not gonna try to like make my burn deck incapable of winning any matchups so that I can eke out like a 42% matchup with Dredge. Just like hang out with my family that weekend instead. That's literally the
Mhm.
the attitude I took. And so I'm like, I just chose the weekends that Crackland Iron works and Affinity and combo decks that I could beat were the dominant decks, and that's how we lined up the wins. So or you just choose a different deck, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. But so like you can have different attitudes about this, but as an example, if you're going into LobsterCon this year and there's all this preponderance of Enchantress data, but you're Rich Shay and you're like, oh well, we know Carpet of Flowers, right? We know Xantid Swarm. Like these are technologies that are not widely used in
Right.
the community yet. Wow, all of a sudden your Dreadnought matchup went really good in sideboarded games,
Right. These technologies are maybe totally absent from the data project as of yet, and this changes everything, right? So this is something LAN is big on is updating your priors, right? So now that you have this new technology, we got to rethink
Yeah, it's like
everything.
not even the same deck anymore,
Right.
right? Like, and then, if you're just like, all right, let's look at all of the Blue Dreadnought data and we're taking this all together, right? I think there's probably a pretty fundamental difference between Dreadnought decks that have accumulated knowledge in the main deck, have accumulated knowledge in the sideboard, or don't have accumulated knowledge at all, right? Like, that's like,
Mhm.
those are three different reasonable ways to play Mono Blue Dreadnought. The deck that made the
Yeah.
finals of LobsterCon this year played for accumulated knowledge. The Hootenanny blue deck that Raska used to come in second at um, the Ross Stretchers Royals deck had accumulated knowledge in the sideboard, and the deck that Selden and Lanny used at LobsterCon previous year had no accumulated knowledge. Like, I think maybe if you want to, so I have the experience of playing the regular main deck and then siding in accumulated knowledge. I found
Mhm.
accumulated knowledge to be fantastic in the sideboarded games that I brought it in. There's a lot of matchups where people can try to outlast a Dreadnought, right? They're like, I'm going to kill all your stuff.
Yeah, my
That's their
understanding is that was great against Terrageddon in particular.
I beat Jeff Ferris, the Clerics Master with this version with accumulated knowledge. It's like, look, if we play my plan A against his plan A is designed to beat my plan A, right? So I'm like, I was dominated some accumulated knowledges and I just outlasted him. And like I think that if you're somewhat look, I think the Parallax Tide strategy is probably too slow in that matchup, so you don't go that direction. He's gonna have way more stupid tutus for 0 or 3 mana, then you're gonna have powder kegs. Like his deck is literally designed to beat them on a blue dreadnought deck and smother and snuff out your 12/12s with cabal therapy backup, right? You can't
Jeff is great at casting Cabal Therapy.
yeah, like you can't just be like, I'm gonna play my A game. Like his A game is designed to be your A game. So the accumulated knowledge strategy is there for that. But I think like, the deck that made the finals of LobsterCon this year played 4 accumulated knowledge in the main deck. I think I would cut an impulse instead of the fourth gush, which I believe is what he did.
Hmm.
But I'm like, I could be there, still play tides. I think there might be something there. But these are basically three different decks. And if you're gonna just jumble all the data together and treat them all as the same deck, it's not true, right? Like decks
Right.
that have a combination of discard or other disruption plus removal are much worse against the ones that have access to accumulated knowledge than the ones that don't have access to accumulated knowledge. And if a deck has access to accumulated knowledge in 3 games, they're even better than a deck that has access to accumulated knowledge in potentially 2 games, right? So,
Mhm.
you kind of have to think about it like that, and think about elves, right? Like, um, I'm currently playing with 3 Thornscape battle mages. Let me tell you
Ah,
how many 12/12s you could kill in the main deck with 3 Thornscape battle mages. The answer is more than four,
all of them.
right?
Yeah.
Right? So I have 3 Thornscape Battle Mages. Thornscape Battle Mage is an elf. You can bounce it with Wirewood Symbiote. I still have the Nantuko Vigilante, and I have a main deck Naturalize. My resistance to a 12/12 deck is very different than a deck that has one Nantuko Vigilante, right? So if Lanny says, Okay, if you think you're playing up against elves, you just mulligan to turn two jam, right? Okay, I literally have a main deck naturalized, three Thornscape Battle Mages. That means that like if your previous plan was I just have to cover one Nantuko Vigilante or morph down creature, or I just have to stop them from casting um survival of the fittest and my 12 solve is good, that's
Hmm.
bad intelligence against a deck that has this much enchantment and artifact destruction.
Right.
And so, like, you can't pretend these are the same decks. By the way, when you have four copies of Survival of the Fittest, that's like having an infinite number of Thornscape Battle Mages, right? You need one Thornscape Battle Mage and one Wirewood Symbiote to go infinite, right?
Yeah.
So, like, so you can't just be like, okay, well, this is, or just like look at Lanny's deck. I haven't gone the full Lanny yet, but his deck has two total untappers, but has main deck Sky Shroud Poacher and four copies of Deranged Hermit. His deck can't deal 3,000 damage, but his argument is you don't have to be able to do 3,000 damage.
Hmm.
Like, to be fair, if my fast turn had been just a Deranged Hermit instead of a Kamal, I wouldn't be threatening to kill you on turn four, right? Like, Kamal will kill you. Like, Deranged Hermit's going to deal 11 or something, right? Those are very, very
Right.
different.
We ran into a situation where if you'd had a third deranged tournament in your deck, I might have been dead, but it didn't come up because you were
I
just one,
only had two, yeah. Well, I had to
right?
discard the first one,
One had been discarded, right?
yeah, to
Yeah.
get going.
But what you're talking about with the battle mages, I think, is a great example of deviating from stock and gaining some significant points by doing something powerful that people aren't expecting.
Well, the thought is, you have to cut something, right? So I've always been a little thin on Tangle Wire, and Tangle Wire is a powerful card. When I 4-0'd the 12-12 decks and then lost to Spencer to lose that meetup at the 4-0 a few months back. He had, fast Tangle Wire in both of the games that he won in our set. And Tangle Wire, one of its main things that it's good at is helping you beat Replenish. But it helps you beat Replenish, but you still don't have a good matchup against Replenish. Like I'm just like not super interested in, you know, fighting for a 30% there. Like I could just who knows what your matchup percentage would be if you just like forgot about Tangle Wire and just went all in on trying to kill them faster, right? Like when this is no longer an option, maybe you play differently. I don't know, but
I think
I just
so.
don't care for the card in general. And but Thornscape Battle Mage is phenomenal. Like among other things, you just plop it onto a Goblin Sharpshooter or Goblin War Chief, and like that gives you a real meaningful ability to win that matchup, right? Like that
Yeah.
that that takes you from like 1% to like 25%, right? Which is way better than going from like, you know, 12% to 30%, which is I think what Tangle Wire does in the replenish matchup.
A couple weeks ago at the league, I tried something similar with elves. I turned the Tangle Wire slots into four Sylvan libraries. My thinking being just make the deck way more consistent at doing what it does. And it was yet another 2-1 at the league. It felt okay. It didn't feel great.
Sylvan Library and Elves has always been strange to me, right? Like it's a card that you can't discard to survival of the fittest. I guess you could make the argument it helps you dig towards survival of the fittest,
It
but it's like
does.
it's not fast, right? It's like even when it's doing what you want it to do, it's on a time delay. So
Yes.
I'm not super into that. I feel like Elves is not a I can dicker around for a turn deck. Like you really wanna get in there with Elves. Versus replenish, I'll just fiddle with my intuitions and attunements and everything for however many rounds. Like I have so much ability to interact with my opponent. I feel like I can just accumulate so much more material with replenish. Maybe
Yeah.
not if I'm getting cut off by SWB, but in
One
most
thing,
matchups.
one thing I noticed with the Sylvan is that it makes more opening sevens keepable. I played it with 8 fetches to give me maximum selection, much like the Miri's Guile in Enchantress, right? Because the Elves deck has so many broken cards it wants, like Gaia's Cradle and Survival, that if you can see 3 fresh cards every turn, you can get to your broken cards more consistently. That was kind of what I was going for there. And then also you're never drawing duds. And then the last thing that it helped with, and this is something that came up in our games, was if you just had one more creature in your hand, then you would have been able to combo kill me with survival, but you were just one piece of material short. And so,
Well, yeah, I mean, in
uh,
particular, I think is I had to discard that. deranged tournament to get
I
the
would have
all of
games where
that.
with the survival, I would just look at the top three and I'd be like, I'm going to pay 8 life and I'm going to win the game right now. So you are going down a piece of material to invest in the Sylvan, but it did sometimes more than pay itself back.
So one thing that I found interesting about having the 8 fetches, which is what I played in my Elves deck on Tuesday, was uh running out of forests. So
Yeah,
I imagine I was just like, okay, I'm fetching here. I'm like, oh shoot, I actually have to get the planes. And the planes in game one has no text except for the white kicker on Thorn's Gate Battle Mage. It just basically taps for colorless there.
right,
But I mean, I had no other option, right? Because my fetch land doesn't get anything else anymore.
right. Not great against Enchantress.
It is, you have to be fast. I'm a little dubious about how good Tanglewire is even in that matchup. You can deploy so many permanents.
Yeah, so I'm it was interesting to hear about Lanny Elves last episode. I have not given it a good look over yet. But I'm open to a future where that is the Elves deck. But I kind of wonder, is that really going to be the be all end all new stock Elves deck?
It's interesting, like I feel like when I came into pre-modern, and I don't know when you came into pre-modern, I know when I met you, but I don't know when you actually entered the format. It was like so differently open, right? And I feel like it's not even a question of optimization. Like we're always optimizing, right? You always want to make your deck a little bit better, right? Like,
Hmm.
how like I think when I first started playing, Aaron Dix had access to one lava dart in his 75, right? And now people have access typically to four lava darts or at least three, right? Because they're anticipating more mirrors, um, I think even the Aaron Dix adherents like myself have shifted from shock to seal of fire because it's so much better in a lot more situations, especially in the mirror, right? So,
Oh yeah,
and it's not
huge.
it's not so much worse in most other situations than shock, right? So, you're always optimizing, but I do think that we have this instance of increased specialization, not just kind of optimization, where like if you look at a card like Tanglewire and Elves, right? Tanglewire is kind of this atypical card in Elves. It's not a creature, so you can't discard it to survival of the fittest. It's not a Sylvan library, so it doesn't make you more consistent. In fact, it makes you less consistent, right? It has a weird effect that isn't present in any of your other cards, but you play it because it might be good in a variety of situations that I'm not going to write down on the piece of paper. Like, okay, well, if I get this, I can slow down replenish and then I can combo kill them before they can combo kill me, right? Like you have cards like that, or you increasingly have cards like um, like Olerade in some versions of creature-based combo decks, right? Do you play one in the main deck or do you only have access to them in the sideboard, right? And it's like I think that increasingly we're seeing people cut away things that have flexible utility in order to make their deck like a turn faster
Mhm.
and or have like a radically different game plan. Like I think Opal Wave and Enchantress is a great example, right? Like previously people were playing with Sacred Mesa. Like I don't know who else they were killing, or they were killing with Words of War, right? But
Mhm.
man, Opal Wave is really powerful and it gives you the ability to preempt replenish if you have fast enough mana, right? Or like
Mhm.
actually just look at elves, which is supposed to be a bad matchup. You get again, according to the duress crew data, that's a 70-30 matchup in favor of elves. You just play a parallax wave and you just like, all right, I don't even have a combo, but I'm just gonna like wave your mana producers and basically buy myself 2 turns here.
Yeah, I've enjoyed watching the decks evolve. I got into a sister format of pre-modern called Middle School about 6 years ago. It's nearly the same format, but that is what we were playing in Tennessee. So like late 2018 is when I learned about it, and I didn't play pre-modern until about 2 years ago. But there's a fair amount of overlap, but it's quite different. But
Well,
there's
you guys have damage on the stack and necropotence, right?
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
those are pretty meaningful differences.
yeah.
That's
There's
whatever you mean.
necropotence. There's no ritual. There is force of will.
Well, like
There is
I would
damage on the stack,
I would guess Mog Fanatic, which
and
is already one of the best cards in pre-modern, gets a lot better when damage on the stack.
yeah. But there's also kind of a different ethos or vibe among the players, where because it literally can't be played online because the rules are different. Uh, and people are kind of more dedicated to brewing and just doing. doing things that are more novel rather than just trying to win. So there's just a different ethos within the community from my perspective.
So is everybody who's a serious middle school player, are they all capable necropotence pilots, right? Like,
I I see less necropotence than you're imagining that I would see at
so
these events.
the last this isn't really true because necropotence was legal and extended after this, including in combo decks. But kind of the last tournament that I kind of register having kind of a huge skill gap in necropotence was Ohio Valley Regionals 1999. And it was a unique tournament. I think there were like two level 5 judges there and a bunch of Pro Tour Hall of Famers for just birding, right?
Hmm.
And I think Mike Dene, who was the head judge, said the one thing that you'll notice, because it's an amateur level tournament, right? It's not a pro tournament. He says like that the lower the numbers you're at table one versus a table, it's like a 600 person tournament or something, right?
Wow.
It's huge, right? So I finished third. I lost to Necro in the top four, which was actually an interesting story. But I'm I you're table two, in the top eight versus a Necropotence player at like table 200. Says the lower the number at the table, the higher the number people necro for, right? So if you think about like your rule of thumb, to me, I look at my hand and I'm like, let's say I have two cards in my hand. How many of those cards are spells, right? If I have two spells, then typically I will necro for six, which is like one more than seven. And then I figure I will pitch an extra land, right? So in the course of the
Yes.
cards that's my rule of thumb. Like you can't do that every time, right? You're going to end up losing to burn cards if you do that all the time. But like versus people, or like, but if I have two lands, then I'll necro for eight, right? So I consider both of my lands not real cards, right? I'm going to get some number of lands. I'm probably going to have extra land in my hand versus a player who's not really well versed at necro skills is just gonna typically necro up to seven,
Just
right?
necro up to seven and not think of every dead card in their hand as not being there because they're just
Yeah,
going to discard it. So they should just over necro and pitch them.
because I think that when you have like strong necro skills, one of the things that you come to understand, well, there's two things you come to understand. One of them is that your cards are quite cheap, right? So you want to make your land drops every turn. That's part of the experience. But like if all your cards cost like are topping up at two, all your cards that aren't corrupts and drain lives are topping up at two, you can play a bunch of them, and the more cards that you can necro for, the more cards you can play, the more cards you can necro for again the next turn.
Hmm.
But more important than that is that some of your cards are dark rituals, right? Or maybe not in middle school, but in other Magic formats
Yes.
and cards are dark rituals. So those are actually promoting you. So that's one rule of thumb. And the other rule of thumb is, people will look at a situation where they have four lands in play. Typically, that's going to be four swamps. And they have a choice between playing Dark Ritual Corrupt and Dark Ritual Drain Life there, right? And the average player is going to say, it's the same. It's not the same. You should definitely Dark Ritual Corrupt there, right? And they're like, no, they both do the same amount of damage. It's like, except if you Dark Ritual Drain Life and then you draw your cards back up the next turn and you don't draw a Dark Ritual, you can't cast the Corrupt in your hand. But if you Dark
Right.
Ritual Corrupt there, right, you're going
And
to
if you
drain for four in either case, pay for this turn's Necroing.
right, and if
Now
you're going
you
to draw
could,
swamps,
yeah,
eventually the corrupt will be much better than four.
you can now drain life the next turn on 5 mana. And so like there's small things like that like over the course of, let's say there's 200 people in the room playing Necropotence. The ones who know those things are going to have demonstrably better results over a 9 round Swiss
Hmm.
than the ones who don't know those things, right? And so I think that like, things like podcasts, proliferation of websites and stuff, it's really flattened out the information curve.
Hmm.
And Lan always talks about, when I top eight at LobsterCon was the last time some idiot could roll into LobsterCon with an untuned replenished deck and possibly think they were gonna
Squee.
make yeah, possibly think they were gonna make top four. So it's like now like everybody has like this level of information that is so much greater than, when I top eighted all those years ago, at this point.
Right. So many rounds been played, both in paper and online at this point. I was going to say one place I learned a lot about necropotence is watching Pro Tour Chicago 1999 finals
You
on
you
YouTube.
you you learned all the things not to do.
Right. Well, Randy Bueller clearly points out what not to do. He lets his opinion be known. It's a great watch. It's still up there on YouTube. Anyone who
So
hasn't seen it, highly recommend it.
so when I spent some time as the color commentator for the Magic the Gathering Pro Tour Sunday broadcasts. And, people asked me, what I always wanted to be as good as Hacker in that match. And no one's ever, and I'm good friends with Brian Hacker IRL now. It's weird. He moved to New York, but I always tell him, like, that's such an inspiration, that one match. Uh, it's so funny. And Randy himself obviously is coming off of being a Necropotence extended Pro Tour champion, so he
Right.
he knew what was going on.
Yeah, he knows how to pick the broken cards and win tournaments with them.
Randy had interesting philosophical things. He'd say like, if you're just saying, I think at the time when we were having this discussion, there was like mono black necropotence, like Cocoa Pebbles, which was Fruity Pebbles combo with necropotence. Or I guess
So,
they called
which
it,
means it's Enduring Renewal, Goblin Bombardment, Shield Sphere, plus Necropotence to help set it up in
yeah,
Academy
so
Reserve.
so
Yeah.
3 card combo plus necropotence. Then there was Adrian's deck, which was 12-12 Pandemonium with necropotence. And then there was Tricks, right? And Um, Randy's argument was Trix was the best deck. And Trix was the best deck, right? But his argument was, which would be enduring in all formats. This is an enduring argument. It happened to be true in this case. I don't know if it's true all the time. But Randy said, look, if you just evaluate, what are the top 5 cards in the format? Just like Force of Will,
Necropotence.
Necropotence, Demonic Consultation, Duress, and I don't remember what the other one was, but he's just like, of the best cards, this deck plays one of them, plays 2 of them, right? This deck plays 3 of them. Trix plays all 5, right? So it's like, so I was like, oh wow, this one has all the best cards, including Force of Will, right?
Hmm?
And the side note about this was, of the different Necropotence decks, it was the only one that gained 20 in the middle of doing its thing.
Yes.
And I think like how to play a tricks deck is something that's not interesting to anyone at this point in 2025. But like there was like phases of play for a deck that would finish the game in 4 turns. It was
It is
playing.
interesting to me, but also I do own a 1999 extended battle box, but I wonder if we were to play that today using modern rules, if Trix is still the best deck
Oh, it would
because
be.
because of the way the stack and the illusions work together. I believe there's a potential for a blowout that didn't exist then.
No, it existed already.
So that
So
was the thing then. You play
yeah,
your illusions, people could snipe it with the trigger on the stack and you would just die.
yeah. If you look at the top 8 of U.S. Nationals 1999, there's a lot of white weenie decks in the top 8, including
Yeah,
the winner, Kyle Rose. And the reason for that was because there was a disproportionate amount of value associated with the card Erase. Erase costs 1 mana,
single
and
white
when
mana.
somebody
Very
casts
excited.
their Delusions of Mediocrity, you could not Illusions of Grandeur. Illusions of Mediocrity was the 10 life version with
Yeah.
no cumulative upkeep, but you could 10 them. And the big deck that was coming up was ID19, which Zvi Moshowitz made me. Stands
Yeah.
for I Draw 19. It was a Yawgmoth's Bargain combo deck. I believe there are 2 copies in the top 8 in that tournament, including Zvi himself. But like any Yahoo, well, also I the funny thing was on day one, I won the first draft with the Waylay trick, and I knew about the Waylay trick because Brian Cowell had told me, and it was secret tech for constructed. And I actually took a lot of heat for this from the team that I was on. The question was whether I should have revealed the Waylay trick. And I'm like, I used it to win the draft. And before this, like I had the judge called on me twice, I think, in the first draft because people didn't know how this worked. I'm like, no, this is how it works. And they're just like, it's just ball lightning. Like
Yeah.
it's
Seems
better
like
than
it
ball
shouldn't work
lightning.
that
Yeah,
way.
like, it shouldn't work that way. But I used it to win the first draft. I think I won like 5 games with it or something. Yeah. And my deck was absurd, right? But then what ended up happening was a bunch of people who didn't know about the Waylay trick suddenly switched to White Weenie for their day 2 decks. Again, I took a huge amount of fire for this. It probably with good reason. But so White Weenie was by far the most popular deck, and ultimately, well, I don't think it was the best deck, but it won the tournament. And that was on the back of Erase, which was great against delusions of mediocrity, and Waylay, which was a ball lightning that they didn't previously have access to.
Hmm. Busted, especially if you had an anthem, right? Then it's just
Yeah,
not in
so
you.
especially if you had an anthem. Yeah,
Whew.
I was ninth on
This is
breakers
the
that year.
this is the era where you could activate your thawing glaciers twice.
It was so based on the same rule.
Yeah.
So we had a deck going into Bob's Chicago that was like Elvish Charm. Is that the name of it? Emerald Charm? Emerald
Emerald
Charm Thawing
Charm.
Glaciers. Yeah.
Green on tap of permanent? Is that has a twiddle kind
Yeah.
of on it?
So Thawing Glaciers was disproportionately good as a result of the change in the rules. But then
Oof.
you could you add Emerald Charm to that, you get multiple Glaciers Thaws. And then Emerald Charm is a good card when in the format, three of the best cards are Necropotence Illusions of Grandeur and Oath of Druids. So like it's actually just a good card. So we had a mono green control deck that used Emerald Charm Thawing Glaciers. But its end game was like it had like a lot of cool things, right? So like Emerald Charm is at its best, right? It's like the erase in this era that's like could also draw an extra card with Thawing Glaciers, right? So it's that, and then people didn't know about it, so it's pretty cool. Thawing Glaciers was great, but at the end of the day, this deck was not as good as Tricks and Oath.
These are fun memories. When this was an era, I was probably like a 13-year-old kid beating college students who were doing thawing glaciers tricks, but I was just playing burn because that's what I could afford.
Burn was, one of the best decks in that era. It was great against regular Necro, kind of medium against Trick. It was actually like probably disadvantaged against Tricks depending on which version of Tricks people were playing. That's also it's another thing, right? Like, um, you had the Tricks decks that showed up the Pro Tour, which there were Illusions donate decks at the Pro Tour. I don't think anyone actually played what would be considered full-on Tricks until Grand Prix Seattle, which I want to say Land top aided that one. He played his sliver deck for sure. But
Oh, counter miner.
Bob won that one also. He won
This was
Pro
a
Tour
super stacked
Chicago,
top eight, correct?
and then he won
Got
he won
tied.
Seattle, right?
Yeah.
But Full On Tricks was not played until that tournament. So we actually had Tricks for the Pro Tour, and instead we played PT Junk because
Mm.
it was not that was I day two'd. Imagine you lost to my Hunted Wumpus deck on day one. And then our other deck was Necro Tinker, which was really good.
Sounds like it would
Yeah,
be.
so we had two pilots on Necro Tinker and like three pilots on Junk. None of us made top eight. But anyway, um uh so Trix wasn't played until Seattle. But then after that it was just everywhere, right? Like it was the Fruity Pebbles deck that could force a will the other guy's Necro.
Mm. Broken. So I just wanted to tie up one loose end on this. In Necropotence in middle school, probably my favorite shell for that is actually Necro in the Rock. Necro Rock with Pernicious Deed to clean up the Necro, which you probably think is not the best use for Necro, but also I know you can't resist a good rock deck.
I can't. I can't.
By good rock deck, I mean mediocre rock deck.
I was I got retweeted by John Finkel yesterday, right? I tweeted the pre-modern league top eight standings, and he retweeted me, and then he was just like minus 150 to land, right? So that means that you gotta put 150 down on land in order to win one, which is actually not that bad. He's let's go, to win 100 on Michael J. But I was thinking back, like Land beat me at the 1K that he won. He beat me at the 1K that he lost in the final. He conceded the finals. But I think he would have won. He just wanted to go to dinner. Right. So like he split the finals with Andy Ballmer, but he won a 1K, beat me. He won a 1K. My birthday last year, I was playing Devourer. And so Devourer is one of the three decks Land 3-0'd with.
Yes.
I combo killed him on turn two. He was playing Landy Hoth, and I'm like, oh, you don't have Gaia's Blessing. And he says, but I do have Trozen Reclamation.
RIP.
Replenish combos me the next turn. So I'm like, oh wow, I do not have a good lineup against Lan in racking every match I've had against Lan in like the last year. But I did beat him at a meetup. I beat him right before PSS. I beat him with Lanny Rock, and he was on white weenie Flippy, and Lan
Hmm.
accused me of metagaming against him because he had asked to borrow my Flippy deck.
Yes.
And I loaned him the Flippy deck and I played the rock and I won that meetup. And he's like, why would you ever play the rock? That deck happens to be great against the deck that you knew I was playing because you loaned it to me.
Does it contain the card Weathered Wayfarer?
I think so.
Is this why Lan hates the card Weathered Wayfarer? Because you loaned him a deck with Weathered Wayfarer and then you beat him?
He was intrigued by this Flippy deck. He's like, "Do you own this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have it put together." He's just like, "All right, let me borrow it for the meetup." And then I pernicious deeded him and, you know, attacked him with Ravenous Palo.
It's never been interested in the deck since.
Well, I mean, he also was like, I can't believe you metagamed against me. And I'm like, hey, two things. A, I denied metagaming against him. But B, metagaming against my friends is so in my range, right? Like,
Yeah.
I literally picked a deck. I picked two decks this week, right? So I let Chris Cruz pick between two anonymous deck boxes, but
Chris
both
keeps it
of the
random.
decks that I picked had positive matchups against Enchantress. Not that it mattered. You
That's a
floated
fun
it.
move. I also had my round one opponent select a deck at random. I knew that Reagan was on Dreadnought, and I had Enchantress and Burn ready. And I was like,
Oh,
man, I
wow.
really
One
hope
of
he doesn't
those
choose
is
Burn.
way better than the other one.
Really hope Burn isn't chosen here, but Enchantress was chosen.
Um, I beat Burn first round. Chris Cruz was on Burn. And Ferris did the same thing. He brought six decks. And he brought six decks, and his selection was goblins. He got a 3-0. I don't know. Jeff has won at least two leagues.
Yes.
Is I think I mean, I just played almost every week. You know, my record is just built on mostly 2-1s.
Did he 3-0 the previous? Because there was maybe the week before he put six decks in front of me. I randomly chose one in round one. It turned out to be Clerics. He
I
may
think
have
I
won
think
out
Jeff
that
might have
week.
won three leagues. Right?
So
I can think of him winning at least one other time with clerics, and you tell me he won last week. So
yeah. So
I know he won last week, right? Because he said he wasn't feeling well, so he didn't defend the belt. Um,
do you want to look at this bracket from
yeah,
like
okay.
each matchup?
All right. So round of eight, Michael J. Flores versus Landy Ho. This is like, so I mean, my whole bracket is, I, no offense, my bracket's way tougher than your bracket, right? Like, so I win even if
You
I
don't have to
beat
apologize
Lan.
to me for saying that, but I think
I'm just saying, man, like if I beat Lan, right, in the minus 150 chances that John Samuel Finkel, the greatest sports bettor of all time, has put on this match. I get the winner of Chris Cruz and Jeff Ferris. Chris
Mhm.
Cruz and Jeff Ferris, I don't know, did you play in Grand Prix Levine or you were like in a Shaolin monk temple that
I
week?
did play there. I top Ford.
Grand Prix Levine?
Yeah.
Who did so
So I
Chris
lost to Brian's Blue Green Madness deck in the top four. I
so
was on some kind of Terrageddon with abeyance thing.
I lost in the round of eight to Ritz with elves, even though I thought that was a good matchup for me.
Hmm.
But Chris Cruz against Jeff Ferris is a redux of the top eight of Grand Prix Lemine. Jeff
Fuck.
was on Clerics and Chris was on Burn that time. I would put money on Jeff playing Clerics in this top eight. Chris knows this, right? So I would guess Chris is on Oath because like Chris's whole range is good against clerics. You know, Chris is the
So
second coming of Bill Ellis, exclamation point, in that he only plays Wooded Foothills decks.
Wooded Foothills. Chris is quite scary to sit across when he's on Oath in particular, in my experience. And Jeff told me the other week, his words were he doesn't play spells, meaning he only plays decks full of creatures. And none of those line up particularly well into a red-green Oath strategy.
But I mean, so if Chris, I've played it against Chris many times, right? And the only decks I can ever remember him playing are Red Green Oath, Burn, and Goblins, all of which are good against clerics.
All of which are good against clerics. Okay.
So maybe Ferris knows this and he goes, I have a very poor record with Jeff Ferris historically on Terrageddon. I think Jeff owns me if he's playing Terrageddon.
Mhm.
When I played Replenish at LobsterCon 2022 or whatever year it was, it's because Jeff beat me to meetup. So I abandoned the deck that I liked at that point. And develop the replenish deck with Squee. So it's me against Lan. If I had to guess right now, and I know that Lan listens to this podcast, so I mean, also I'm chatting with him like right now, but
Nice.
not that I'm not focused on my conversation with you, but he sent me some news that apparently the Cleveland Cavaliers have traded Isaac Okoro for Lonzo Ball, which is
Wow.
yeah, that might mean Ty Jerome is out. That's the scuttlebutt. But anyway, I don't know, man. I would much rather have Ty Jerome than 22 million dollar Lonzo Ball with 1 foot. Um, and so and Ty Jerome costs $2 million anyway. Put that aside. I would guess Lan is on Hoth. That puts me on stasis for this bracket, which is bad because you know that based on this. I put you on elves for your side of the bracket, uh, with the information that I have. Here's it goes. So Rich Busey, who's the third seed against Derek Heaton.
Yeah.
Derek has among the widest ranges, right? So
He has
the,
so many decks, and they were all assembled in 2020, and he's still just playing them and winning.
so you, me, and Lan have very wide ranges, right? So all of us are like can play anything. Um, Derek is a similarly wide range, right? So he
Yeah.
played Oath this week. His most successful weeks were all in White Weenie.
He's
He beat
also
me.
played Balancing Tings.
I have a feeling Derek is going to play like he cares, right? So Derek is often playing goofy shit, okay? Like he's
Mhm.
just showing up goofy shit, but I won a 2K that Derek also made top 8. He had a real deck in that top
Mhm.
8 of the 2K that I won, right? So um so I feel like he has a wide range, but he's playing for the league championship.
He's going to bring the heat.
I think his range might narrow, right?
Derek,
For
for a long time, only brought goofy shit to Legacy, and then he started bringing the mono red Moon Stompy and just crushing everyone week after week. And he's completely dominated the Legacy League at Hex with Moon Stompy because he started playing a
yeah,
competitive
so
strategy. So
I
watch
think
out for
like
Derek on a competitive strategy.
but Rich has an incredibly narrow range.
Hmm.
Which portent stasis deck is Rich going to bring is the question, right? Rich's range goes from stasis to tide control. I don't know if he has
I
anything
think
outside
it
that range.
I think it extends to Replenish. I've played games against Rich on Replenish.
So Rich's range is very has basic islands in it though, right? And
Hmm.
don't get me wrong, Rich was in first place 2 weeks ago, and you and I both caught up to him in part because he didn't play this week,
Well, if your
right?
range is going to center around one basic land, that's probably the best one to choose.
Yeah. So well, my range last year at PSS was just based around Mog Fanatic, and I didn't lose a game until
Keep-
until I lost until I played the stupid rock deck against Lanny and the camera matched in my basement.
I was talking to, I think, Ty the other day, and he just mentioned that it's way more fun to win out when people know what you're going to be on coming into an event and you just win out anyway.
Ty has a Pro Tour top 8, right? People not appreciate like an actual Pro Tour
He's
top 8, not like a
incredibly
Grand
sharp.
Prix 16th or whatever like I
Yeah.
have. Right. So, all right. So, and then you against Reagan. Reagan is he was on 12-12 this
I
week?
played against Reagan at least three, possibly four of these. Reagan is relatively recent to pre-modern,
Is he
built,
a legacy guy?
yes. So built Machine Head first.
And he's won a league with Machine Head.
Oh yeah, crushed me that league. And then also, in Legacy as a Dreadnought player, we were talking like I said, why do you not play Dreadnought in pre-modern? And Reagan said, my I don't have Parallax Tide. I said, you don't need it. You can just play without it until they come in. So he's been playing Dreadnought the last couple weeks since, and we played in round one this past week when I was on Enchantress, and Reagan learned how to play against Enchantress as Dreadnought.
If I were you, right? So the reason that I think that your side of the I have two reasons why I think your side of the bracket is softer. One, you don't have Lan in your side of the bracket. Lan has won 3 leagues. So Lan's top 8 is just based on winning 3 times and showing up like 30% of the time or something, right? He just always wins.
Right,
Right. So
10-time Pro Tour competitor, right?
Lan's actual win rate is the highest in the entire league, I think, and that's who I'm playing in the top 8, right? So
Hmm.
it's based on two things. One is that I have Lan in my half, and I have to play Lan in the first round. But the second reason is because range on one of your players, on one of the top performing players in yours, is so narrow, right? Like Rich is not going to play goblins, right? So
Well, I think Reagan's on one of two decks, and then Rich is on one of a couple.
So if
Derek can be anything.
let's say you're just gonna like, say you're just gonna like gamble a little bit, right? So I'm gonna gamble a little bit and just like, okay, I think that Rich is gonna get out of his top eight match against Derek, right?
Yeah.
You can plan for the second round and just be playing elves, and you're just like, all right, can like I don't know what Reagan's range is, but Reagan's range includes Dreadnought, right? If you told me right now Reagan was gonna play Dreadnought and I was in your seat, I would just bring my 75 from last Tuesday. I think I have a great Dreadnought matchup, and I'm going to murder Rich in the top four if that's the
With
if the
Enchantress.
no, with elves. That's what I would
Oh, that
actually
that league. Okay.
actually.
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. You could also just take Enchantress if you think that Reagan is on 12-12. You 2-0'd him, right? This week.
Well, I could also bring my like I enjoy playing 12-12, and I feel pretty confident in the mirror. And then I feel very confident against Stasis with that deck.
So SWB armed
Few
with
good options.
SWB armed with 12-12 is a dangerous freaking thing. That's my that's tough, man. Like
I like that deck.
your whole half of the bracket allows you to make those kind of decisions. Like I feel like I can't take any of my go-to decks from my spot, right? So my go-to decks are all like hyper focused, pick a pressure point and hit it type decks. I
Hmm.
have to play I have to play a widespread deck because I have Lan in the top eight. Lan's range includes Devourer. These are just the decks that he won leagues with.
Right.
Devourer, Stompy, and Replenish. Right?
Right.
Like I don't think that I can even play 12-12. It's not in my range for this one,
Hmm.
even though I historically 12-12 is my best win rate deck I've ever played because Land's range includes Hoth. So
Andy Hoth is a very likely deck.
yeah, so if I'm like, all right, if he's on Hoth and I'm on 12-12, I'm dead, right? He's gonna murder me. Right? This is like the matchup that he prepared for, and he has Carpet of Flowers tech that I know about. Okay. Right. So I right now I have to start off by eliminating the best deck in the format. I think that Hoth is maybe a coin flip with Replenish. Right. Like I think Replenish is probably favored, but I don't think it's hella favored. And like that's that's kind of a problem if that's my top eight matchup. But I was like, all right, is my go-to now Stasis? And I'm like, I could go to Stasis. Stasis is really good against a big chunk of Land's range, but the problem is his range includes Stompy.
Hmm.
So Land knows that I'm like, he's like, all right, first level game theory. Mike knows this is my range. He's gonna go Stasis and then he's just gonna giant growth me out, right? So
Right.
like,
His untappers.
so I honestly, I would choose if I were you, I would choose Elves, which is one of the decks you've won a shit ton of meetups with, right?
Hmm.
I would choose Elves over Enchantress because I
Hmm.
think that if you had the right Elves deck, you would beat Reagan on 12. Well, you would have deck advantage against Reagan on 12-12, right? And that like you would be in an amazing spot against Rich in the top four on Stasis if Rich wins that one. And then if I win my half of the bracket, you're I mean, when we played for a belt like a month ago or something. You mulliganed to five and gave me the play and beat me on turn three anyway, right? Like it was
Hmm.
such a lopsided matchup. So, but I can't do that, right? My half of the bracket includes a guaranteed match against Oath of Druids, Engineered Plague, or Hella Red removal spells in the top four if I'm on elves, right? Like no way I'm getting out of that in the top
Right.
four.
Good
So like
news is if you face Chris Cruz and he's on Oath, you'll at least be on the play so that a turn one sphere of resistance won't completely body you.
yeah, but I mean, it's every card in his deck is a nightmare, right? He has like Pyroclasm and Oath of Druids from there. So he doesn't just first turn Sphere of Resistance to me, but like, I lost to Oath Ponza last Tuesday. It wasn't particularly close. Um, and so yeah, so all of my go-to decks are just literally off the table. Like, so I mean, like, what do I do? Like I'm like like I'm not gonna play red deck into this top eight, right? There's gonna be
Right.
this is the league top eight. There's gonna be 12-12s at some point.
I love how different this is. Like metagaming this is different from, say, a a, a Winamax that's happening tomorrow, or Lobster Con, or any other
I'm
like distinct considerations for each of these three sizes or types of events.
yeah, so there was a question of were we going to run the league finals the same day as Sacred Torch, right? Just for logistical purposes. And I'm like, if we were going to run it the same day as Sacred Torch, I would literally bring two different decks. No way I'm playing the
Oh,
same deck in both
I would just
events.
drop because I'm not playing that many rounds in one day.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, so I had Enchantress on my short list for Sacred Torch, but
hmm
I'm like loaning Osip the Replenish deck that I've been playing, right? Like, so I'm like, all right, literally the overlap between number of Pro Tour champions in this tournament and number of nightmare matchups, like, is pretty bad. Like, that's not something I want to walk into. And people are like, that's one player out of 60 players or whatever. I'm like, dude, Lanny reminded me of this. He says, when I used to win hella meetups, this is like, I think before you joined our community, I was winning more than half the meetups, right? Like first place. I literally metagamed against the players that I thought were going to be competitive against me, and then just hoped that my overlap of knowledge of the format and historical play skill or whatever would just get me through the other matchups. Like this is a situation where like we literally have Jeff Ferris, Lan, Rich, so everybody in the top. I mean, I don't know Reagan's game at all, right? But like in the in the 5K that I won with that put um Splinter Twin on the map like way back in 2011, I played Derek in that one and I didn't beat him. Okay, this is a tournament that I won, right? I did not beat Derek Eaton in that tournament. And so like every single player, I mean, again, I don't know Reagan, but like every single player on in this top eight has taken games or matches from me. And I literally, in my opinion, I have, if not the toughest matchup, the second toughest matchup in the round of eight. Like nobody beats SWB, but I mean, nobody beats Lan either. So, and the thing is, I'm literally robbed of all my go-to decks. Like that's the thing that's killing me. Like I can't like all the decks that I can play on autopilot, I can't even they're not in my consideration set.
I mean, I'm sure you said this joking, but I thought maybe you were really considering 23andMe for an event with untimed rounds. And also, I mean, Lan, longtime friend, you might as well make that match last.
I mean,
Play a deck that has a nice long game.
23 and me is
If he tries to
probably got
devour
a
a combo you and you hit blessings, you're excited.
23 and me is pretty good against Land's whole range, actually. Ooh.
It might
That
not be
is the thing that
terrible against the next bracket either.
I think it's probably pretty good against clerics, right? It's probably great against Oath,
It's
right?
definitely great against those because you have so many lands and you have ways to find them and you
Yeah,
have
and
Compost webs. So I think that's what I would put you on looking at your bracket.
I was thinking about it. Man, I'm gonna have to practice hard. 23 and me is an easy deck to misplay.
Oh, I've got the cards. I've been meaning to sleeve it up. It'll
It
happen.
is so like here's the thing about 23 and me. I played it in a meetup and I only won rounds because my opponents conceded, right? So like ability to like win a game in a timed round is dubious, right? So Andy played it at Grand Prix Levine. I played him in an elimination game, not for top eight, but in an elimination game. And I was just like, man, and he beat me first game. And I was just like, I kind of want to win because I want to win for me. And I kind of want to win because I kind of want 23 and me to win the tournament. But yeah, I 23 and me is in my consideration set, and I did post that in the meetups channel. But I don't know, man. If it's best of five, there's just no way. I don't know if I have
So
the
it's
mental
no, I
wherewithal.
think everyone has voted down the idea of it being best of five because it starts in the evening. It's the the Pauper League top eight started in the morning, and therefore best of five was reasonable, but no one wants to show up at 7 p.m., play 3 rounds best of five, and then take the train an hour home.
Oh, but like some people like Chris and Jeff both live in New Jersey.
Right. Yeah, no one wants best of five is not going to happen. It'll be
Oh
best.
wait, and we have to play in the Upper West?
If that date is selected, then yes, we'll be in the Upper
Oh,
West. So
man, I don't know
so
where Derek lives. Rich lives in Brooklyn. I don't know where Reagan lives. You and I live pretty close to each other. Yeah,
yeah.
dude, Upper West, 23 and me, two people in the top eight live in New Jersey. This is
Yeah, no one wants us to go super late. So
this is like a 4 a.m. finish.
so any other thoughts on this specific event?
What do you think about my pregame analysis? So I don't know Reagan. You said he was on 12-12 this week. He's one with Machine Head.
Put him
I
on
have
either machine head or 12-12, but probably 12-12.
So you have a super wide range. If I were Reagan and I knew I was playing against you, there's no way I'd play Machine. There's no way I'd play 12-12. You 2-0'd him, right? I'd just be off it, right? Like
But
that's
12-12 has a shot against anyone.
that is true. That is true. Derek, super wide range, would not try. If I had to guess right now, I would put Derek on White Weenie.
Wow.
He beat me with White Weenie in a league a month ago. And White Weenie's got a lot of distance chance. I think Derek has got to guess that Rich is on stasis.
What if Derek shows up with White Weenie with Suntail Hawk?
Which one is Suntail?
Is
One
that
one.
not is that the 1 mana 1/1 flying vigilance? Just pack 4 of those, expecting your round one opponent to be on stasis.
Oh wow, that would be incredible.
That'd be for the memes. That'd be very fun.
Uh, I would put money on Jeff on clerics. Or clerics or Terragon. Jeff beat me in a 1K at Bearded a while back. I was on Elves, he was on Terragon. But people were like, "How'd you lose?" He had Cataclysm. Also, he was super disciplined, right? So I kept trying to bait his stupid seal cleansing with Tangle Wire. He just ignored me and Cataclysm me out of the match. Chris, something with Wooded Foothills. I think that if I were Chris, I would be on Oath. Lan, super wide range, no idea. I don't think he'll play Stompy. I don't think I think that he will not be on Devourer, but he could be. I don't know. And then me,
I think he might play a deck that he's not played in the league just to really throw off everything.
if I had to gamble, I would gamble that Lana's on a replenish deck, whether it's traditional replenish or Hoth. That's what I think he's probably on.
Safe. So speaking of Suntail Hawk, I have a I have a question. I have a couple questions from listeners and friends that I thought I'd bring in. Is this a good time for that?
Bring it. This is
Yeah.
so
So,
exciting.
what's the best card that no one, not even you, are playing? And we're talking about a card within the pre-modern format that would fit into an existing deck or be central to a high-performing deck, but just no one's playing it. Not just some random card in a vacuum. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's interesting. If this is a couple of years ago, I was strongly of the opinion that the three best cards in pre-modern that no one was playing were Thawing Glaciers,
Hmm.
Gaia's Blessing, and Abeyance, right? So people widely play Gaia's Blessing now. When I first started playing, this card is fantastic. Everyone should play it. No one was playing it. I will point out, I'm going to put this in air quotes. I invented Guy's Blessing Kill Stasis, which I played in the PSS, although my record was so bad, right? But I had a lot of this stuff. I didn't have some of the other stuff. Like I shouldn't have played Thawing Glaciers in that deck. The concept of Thawing Glaciers and Stasis together didn't quite jibe for me the way that it should
No.
have. But I had a lot of the other stuff that ended up being good. So I think Thawing Glaciers is played a little bit now, right? So Andy Vollmer had it in his sideboard in the 1K that he won in Landstill.
Love that.
Uh, it's played, it's played sparingly, I think, in grindy matchups.
There are some
Uh,
big red control decks that play it.
yep. So,
Fringes.
Phil Nguyen is Thawing Glaciers and Gaia's Blessing in his mono red deck. So, that's a thing. And then I think Abeyance is like medium played. Lan as a replenish player is on the Orm's Chance side. I'm a big fan of Abeyance. I played Abeyance this past week. It's good for me as usual.
Hmm.
But like none of those cards is not played at all, right? Of those, Thawing Glaciers has played the least. Abeyance, I think, could see more play. Guy's Blessing, I think, is like pretty widely played now. But those are kind of my go-to thoughts of cards that people don't play. Um, Let me think what else is there. Now, people play like a wide variety of cards in unusual circles, like Vision Charm to mill yourself, Vision Charm to mill the opponent are both really strong, right? So, Vision Charm in Doomsday is really good, but I mean that's super widely played because it's in Dreadnought. I don't know. I'll think about this and maybe come back to it. The card that I would say that the two cards that I would say that I don't think are very widely played are Lodestone Bauble, which only Andy Levine plays, but I think that it has wide applications that are not generally played right now, right? So, if people are playing a lot of Oath Pawns, that card gets more context. And I also like it in the same way that I like Urza's Bauble, right? It can stockpile a card so that you can break the rule of seven. You can stockpile a card, you can delay a draw until later. Um, Famously, John Finkel played a 17 land counterpost deck that had four Lodestone Bauble. And so, like, he was very judicious about how he used Lodestone Bauble to rebuy his planes from thawing glaciers.
Did not
I'm
know
sorry,
that.
for Kjeldren Outpost. So his deck had 17 total lands, including, I think, two Kjeldren Outposts and four thawing glaciers.
Was this in
So
the era when Abeyance was just cracked?
I think he had four Banes in his deck. Yeah.
Because it turned off your opponent's ability to tap lands, right? So it was basically time walk.
That was only the first week. I played
Oh,
in a
what week?
PTQ that week, and the go-to deck that week was Aether Flash, red white control, Aether Flash Abeyance. And so Aether Flash is an enchantment, which is I believe 4 mana RR2. When a creature comes into play, it takes 2 damage. So like I was playing like
Huh.
a black red beatdown deck. Like all my creatures were like 2/2 haste, 2/2 flanking for two or whatever. I sided in Sand Golem, which is
2, 3 for one. Is that the
yeah.
one?
So
Yeah.
yeah, I sided in Sand Golem 3/3 for five because it was like one of the few cards I had that could just survive an
Oh,
Aether
I'm thinking of the
Flash.
wrong golem. 3, 3 for 5. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a an obstinate Baloth type card. If you discard it, then it goes into play, etc. Um, so but that deck was red white. It had uh I think Wildfire Emissary was its main way to win, which is a 2/4. So it played all cards that had three or greater toughness to get past its own Aether Flash, and then also Abeyance. And like that was the lockdown. The default deck of that era, like, people were just playing like 2/2s for two, 2/2 haste for three, stuff like that. Maybe a Cloud Elemental was like a big creature, but like this was an era where like Serrated Biskellion was a playable, so I think O2 two counters or whatever for three was a playable Magic the Gathering card. Like Bodalian Illusionist was a playable card. Like you could not get past, Abeyance, which was Time Walk then, and Aether Flash. So, but that did not last very long.
Lodestone Bauble counter post.
Yeah. So, but John played Lodestone Bauble. I believe it was 17 total lands. Of those lands, four of them were Thawing Glaciers, and two of them were Kaldron Outposts. So,
I,
uh,
I know what I'm doing next year at Alpha 2 Alliances in Nashville, which is a format we like to run.
well, but he
Sounds
also had
fun.
four Brainstorm. That was an innovative thing at the time.
Love it.
Yeah. So, but notably, he did not play Soul Devi Digger. So, a lot of the people who are going to be maniacs like this would play Soul Devi Digger. John did not want a Soul Devi Digger in his deck because it would slow him down. So,
It
he's just so tight.
was often paired with Browse, correct?
Yeah, he didn't have any of those cards. His card advantage engine was Brainstorm, Falling Glaciers, Lodestone Bauble for recovery, Hyper Cantrips, obviously, to smooth out his land draws.
Gotcha. And Thawing Glaciers is the only true like card advantage source there, right? The rest of them are kind of selection.
I don't think there was like Fact or Fiction hadn't been printed yet. No, there's no
Glaciers is a
AK.
great one, right? You don't have to worry about Wasteland, so it's safe. You
Yeah,
have to worry
so
about political trickery. Someone might take it from you, but
you might political trickery them with your thawing glaciers and then get the thawing glaciers back at the end of turn.
yeah. Oh, you're probably more worried about losing your outpost to political trickery.
You could get it back with your political trickery.
Okay, you just stack them up.
So, um, yeah. So let's see. The next best option I'd have after Lodestone Bobble would be Volcanic Hammer. So Volcanic Hammer is probably not good enough at all. Maybe Hammer of Bogardon.
So
So
Volcanic Hammer is 2 mana, 3 damage sorcery from Portal, correct?
yeah, it's just worse than Incinerate. So I think like, Incinerate is competing for the worst burn card, but like Volcanic Hammer does three. It is a little bit different angle. It's not
Yeah,
unplayable. I think Hammer of Bogardon probably has some options. Uh, let's think like Fire Slinger maybe. That's a card that's not played at all. Fire
not
Slinger is
at
actually
all.
pretty strong, right? So
Right.
like if you just get a Fire Slinger down against elves, that's a pretty severe tax against elves. Doesn't use any mana. But the other one I think that maybe has some potential because you can play it highly asymmetrically is Impending Disaster. Do you remember that one?
No, I'm gonna have
Okay.
to read this one.
I'll Scryfall
Is
this
it
one for you.
2 mana?
It is 2 mana.
White one,
No, red one.
red one. Okay.
Impending Disaster. It is red one enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are seven or more lands on the battlefield, sacrifice this enchantment and destroy all lands. So if one guy has three and one guy has four, both guys have zero. Right.
Hmm.
So you could play this in a deck that doesn't need to have a lot of lands in play. But like imagine you just had this in your red deck against black-white control.
Yeah.
Right? Like they can't operate with less than four lands, right? And you can kind
True.
of pick when
Right.
when you
They'll
want to
they'll
do
have one
this.
turn where they know it's coming because you've
Yeah, look,
committed the land. They have one turn window to vindicate something, whether
yeah,
it's
but
the
like
enchantment or one of your lands.
so this isn't, it's the effect of you have to play a little cagily, right? But there are some matchups where people have to deploy at least three lands, right? You could play your fourth and trigger the impending disaster, especially if you have extra, right? But like it's an Armageddon for two mana. And
Yeah.
so
And
one
which existing archetype you see that burn specifically you think could fit into?
aggro, some sort of maybe burn, some other sort of aggro deck. Imagine you started off with, well, what if you put the impending disaster on the stack and then sacrifice two of your lands to fire blast them? What if you had like four lands in play? They have three, you have four. You sacrifice two lands to fire blast them and use a barbarian ring as the fourth land. You're basically losing one.
The bite
They're
of the
losing
ability
three.
still resolves if the
Yeah.
condition is met upon not met upon resolution. I
Wait,
have
the
to.
ability goes on the stack, right? You sacrifice the
Yeah.
enchantment.
Okay.
Right?
Right on.
So the thing is like this is a functionality that can enter a deck that, maybe goblins. What about goblins, SWB?
What if Elves doesn't want to splash white for Armageddon and just wants to play this?
Uh elves
To
lands are
lose?
pretty valuable, right? Losing the mountain is bad because you only have one. All your
Right.
creatures will lose haste, right? In order to get impending disaster in play, you need to be willing to sacrifice the mountain. So I don't know that I would do that. And then the second thing is, dude, you're talking about losing Gaia's Cradle, right?
Yeah.
So it is
Okay.
interesting though. But I mean, like maybe red green aggro, was kind of
Oh
flirting
yeah.
with being an archetype.
Riverboa, Rancor,
Yeah,
Morganatic, Grim Lavamancer. I like it in that deck.
yeah. So I think it's truly a card no one plays, and this card can severely angle some decks. Imagine you got this in play against any deck that Andy Levine is willing to play. Andy
Yeah.
Levine's range includes Veteran Explorer and Parallax Tide, right? Like he's always got at least four lands in play.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great answer. Love it. Thank you. So, another question that's come in, how can someone maintain their competitive edge when they don't have the opportunity to play competitively frequently?
Well, I mean, it depends, right? Like I play more standard than I play pre-modern, right? So I will play pre-modern three times this week. So this probably sounds like you will also play pre-modern three
So,
times this
I,
week.
I wanted to ask this question because it was passed along, but I acknowledge that neither of us are the best person to answer this because we both play Magic in real life multiple times a week. I think Lan is a great person to answer this question because Lan didn't play pre-modern between last fall's LobsterCon and this spring's LobsterCon, and he 7-2'd both of them.
So, I mean, and he's strung together how many 1K finals and wins, right? And he's
Since
three
he started
3-0s
playing
in
again
league,
post
right?
LobsterCon, he's actually coming every once in a while, but he really doesn't take it seriously or think about it, or he doesn't. Actually, I think he does think about it quite a bit between meetups, but that's enough to keep him
Well, he
sharp.
plays like
Thinking
hella
about it.
limited, right? He plays, his duplicate draft and he
Mm,
spends like a lot of his conscious awake time hours thinking about Magic, right? So, I don't know. Competitive edge means a lot of different things. Um, I am such a different player than I was when I was like trying to play in the Pro Tour or like playing in a lot of like competitive cash tournaments. Like I
mm,
don't cut my opponent's deck anymore. Like I used to be so focused on in tournament, in game operations, called the judge at the drop of a feather. Like
right.
I was a completely so I'm not a good person to answer this because I don't have a competitive edge anymore. I mostly like want to play with my friends and explore different deck ideas at this point. Like I don't think I cut anybody's deck at LobsterCon last year, right? Like you know, it's just I think yeah, I'm trying to think because I played in RC last year. I do. Lanny gets after me all the time on this. He's like, if you want to go this way with your life, you have to dedicate more time to it.
Hmm.
But like, I think I'm in this bad spot where I'm good enough to qualify for national level events, but not don't have enough time or will to like actually care about winning once I'm there. So I just end up having a disappointing record because I didn't prepare as hard as somebody who's
Yeah.
probably not as talented as I am.
When
You know,
people
like
ask if I want to go to an RCQ, I think, what happens if I win? I said, well, you get to go to an RC. I'm like, well, what's that? And they're like, well, it's several hundred people for 2 days in a huge convention hall. I'm like, no, you couldn't pay me to do that. I have no interest in this. So why would I go to an RCQ?
I had a spell last winter where I was doing really well in standard on MTGA. So I'm like, all right, so Hex has like a Wednesday night RCQ. I'm like, I feel like if I show up, I'll win. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So I'm like, so I played three different leagues with three different versions of red, white, and standard to determine which one I should play in the league. I'm sorry, which one I should play in the RCQ, but then I won all three leagues. So I was just like, okay, so I gained zero knowledge, right? So
Yeah.
like I won all three leagues. Okay, so what should I do? But then I found out that if I won the RCQ, it would qualify me for a modern RC. So instead I went to movie club
Mm.
that night.
Oh,
That,
good. Just go
that
see a
was
movie
my
with
that was
friends,
my
right?
decision, right?
Good
I'm like,
move.
look, what am I supposed to do? I'm gonna qualify for a modern RC. I fucking hate modern, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
yeah, so I just literally
It's
didn't play.
it's good to ask yourself, what are your goals? Why are you playing? Why do you even want to be competitive? I think this almost kind of ties in. We were talking about exercising the other day, and we're both kind of at a point where like we want to stay fit, but we don't want to hurt ourselves, right? There's don't want
Hurting
to get
yourself is
injured.
the worst. That prevents you from further training.
Right. And so similarly, like with Magic, my goal is to like not burn out and to make it an enjoyable thing that I do. I'm not trying to like dominate everything. I'm also like
You're not.
I'm not
You're
trying to
you
like
are failing if that is your
oh
goal to not dominate everything.
but am I like an unpleasant person to play against because
No.
I'm cutting your deck or calling the judge
You
or
know,
like angle shooting? Like that's what I'm getting at by saying a person who's trying to dominate, I mean someone who's using every resource and being unpleasant to just to try to win a match. Like that's what I'm intentionally not doing.
I realized something about myself. I talked about this on the podcast, I think, a month ago or something, which is like I was so salty the first time I ever played against Bill Ellis because I had a good matchup and he beat me. Or we
Mhm.
drew, one of the two, right? And I was just like I like looked back on the person that was, and I'm like, this was like only 2 years ago or something. And I was just like, why would I ever behave like that? Right? This is not that serious, you know? And
Right.
so like, and I'm having so much more fun winning fewer meetups and, exploring more decks. And like, you are so not unpleasant to lose. The thing that I wish I were better at is like, whenever I lose, I just talk about how I could have won the game. And I still do that, right? I'm just like, well, if I'd won the roll, I would have mana leaked your Argothian
Just
Enchantress.
comes
Like
out, right? Yeah.
every single time, right? Like that's how my brain works on this, and I think maybe that's a permanent disfigurement that I have on my brain. But like, but I think it's more driven from like, can I squeeze an article out of this? How do I learn? How do I learn for the future? My whole thought process is usually like, um, there's two kinds of matchups, but the vast majority of matchups fall into in the first case, which is I should win this match. If I don't win this match, it's because something went wrong.
Yeah.
Sometimes the
Or it means there's
thing
something wrong with me, which is what leads to like feeling bad after the match.
sometimes
And
the
it
thing
leads
that
to being
went wrong
unpleasant
was
to the
me.
opponent. It's really comes down to like shaming yourself when you
So
don't, right?
versus I lost when I was playing Stasis last week, and I lost to Gregory playing Reanimator,
Animator.
and I I mean I don't know that I'm gonna put this in air quotes. I don't know if he outplayed me, but he had his strategy set up from like way, way earlier in the game, and he executed on his strategy. He cracked my stasis lock because he knew how he was gonna do it. And like, like that's not an out. Like I didn't feel like I had the game locked up, right? I had him under quote unquote stasis lock, but I didn't have any propagandas down, right? So he
Mhm.
just like waited until he could cast all of his discard in one turn and then ritualed out into Chroma. So he knew that I wasn't going to have any um Chain of Vapors because he cast multiple unmasks to clear
Yeah.
my counter spells.
Well
Then
played. He identified his plan and he
yeah,
patiently waited for the right moment and he executed it.
named Chain of Vapor with Cabal Therapy and then ritualed out of Chroma. And then so like I was not gonna win now, right? So
Unless there's
okay.
unless there's a chain on top of your deck, you're kind
Yeah,
of
so
exposed.
Like, so he knew where he was coming from on this, right? So I got game two, right? We had so little time for game three, but he just had like the putrid chain of vapor. So, I got my stuff down and he just chained me, untapped his stuff and killed me, right? So like and I don't know if that's an outplay, but I could clearly recognize that he had his agenda set up and he was going to play for that, right? So I could
Hmm.
super like I would just I'm like, what could I have done? That's not one that I'm supposed to win, right? And so
Right.
he had beaten Rich also that night. I think he won the league last week. And so he beat two stasis decks. And Rich was like, "Oh, this is an unwinnable matchup." And I'm like, "I don't think it's unwinnable. I think we need to approach it in a certain way." So I watched his match with Rich, right? He beat Rich. But like Rich doesn't have any propagandas in his stasis deck. I'm like, I had multiple propagandas in game two, and Gregory eventually conceded, right? So, this is a spot where we could play for a game plan that could win, but he clearly knew what he wanted to do, and he did it, right? Because part of the problem is stasis is so slow to kill. That's
Hmm.
one, and the second thing is the card Putrid Imp allows you to not die to Black Vice. He has like fundamental deck advantage, right?
And I think he's got a bit of Brewer's advantage there. And one thing of note about Gregory is Gregory's a solid legacy player. I also see Gregory playing old school between rounds at legacy events, but Gregory doesn't seem to be like super plugged into pre-modern, right? He's got decks. He's been playing Magic for decades, and he has fundamentals and he builds what he likes, but he's not someone who's like looking at every top eight that came out in the previous week, and he's not consuming podcast content. So he doesn't have these preconceived notions from external sources of like what are our viable strategies. He's not one to show up with a pre-constructed deck, kind of to quote what Lan said the other week. Like you don't know what he's going to be on, but you know it's going to be his own thing. And it's going to at least be fundamentally sound. And I think it's exciting when people like that come into pre-modern, especially in the year 2025, because they might introduce us to ideas that our hive mind is just blind to.
So yeah. Well, anyway, he got the league, he got me, and so I said like the vast majority of games are I should have won. Like look at our matches this week. I'm like, look, True Data says I had a 70% chance to win on Tuesday and a 90% chance to win on Thursday. I won zero games of the four that we played, right? Part of that is you won the roll. Part of it is your deck lined up right. But the thing is, it's not a 1,000,000% matchup. Even if it's like a 90-10, you win 10% of the time. I mean, well, sorry, the average player against the average player wins 10% of the time, right? This includes polluted data that doesn't have Opal Wave in it. And you're not the average player, right? Like your equity in that is like way more than 10% and you won the roll, right? Like, so I'm like, all right, what went wrong? What could have gone differently? A bunch of things. But I'm like, I'm not salty about losing to you, right? If I played against somebody who I did not recognize and the same thing happened, I would still be bitching about it right now.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you will not believe this guy won the roll. I couldn't stupid Manalik is stupid art code that yeah, that would be a different situation maybe, but I'm like, yeah, whatever. Nobody beats SWB. I'm just one of the many people that he steamrolled.
That was a fun question. I have another one from the same asker. Feel free to plead the fifth on this one if you want, but it's what's the single most shameful or scummiest thing you've done in MTG? Or that's been done to you. Maybe you just want to answer the second, the scummiest thing, or maybe you don't want to answer either of them. But this is asked by the scummiest person I know. Shout out to Josh Bergoa.
Okay, I I used to play hard, right? So, I think like Patrick Chapin says Marcio Carvalho plays hard. Okay. If anyone understands this sentence I just said, he said Marcio Carvalho's main fault is that he plays hard. Okay. He plays too hard. Okay. I used to play hard though. I don't think I don't think I ever played in a way that crossed the line, but I was probably unpleasant to play with it for a long time. Right. So I would own that, but I don't think I ever crossed the line. The scummiest thing that ever happened to me, um, Pro Tour New York 2001, I was teaming with John Schuler and BK. We played against ABU, Team Alpha Beta Unlimited, Noah
Hmm.
Boken, Chris Benefel, and Ryan Fuller. Um, at the time, I didn't know this because both Ryan and Chris had bad reputations. I'll put this in quotes, had bad reputations. I didn't realize that of the three, Fuller was the only one who had, I'm sorry, Noah is the only one who had actually been banned at that point. So my opponent was Noah, and he was teaming with Fuller and Benefel. Fuller and Benefel both were, I believe, suspended or banned afterwards. Fuller's I talked to at a Grand Prix once. Fuller to the point that when I think he finals the Masters once, that if he showed up to an event, they would find a reason to disqualify him from the
Oh,
event
just
before the event started, right? Like he would literally travel to show up for an event, they would find a reason, right? Like they at some point he stopped showing up to events because he wasn't doing anything wrong and they found a reason for him not to play. To be fair, he had done a lot of stuff wrong to get to that point. So the team is me, John Schuler, and Chris Benefel against ABU. We're riding high. I don't think we even need to win out. If we win out, we're certainly in the top four of the Pro Tour, right? Um, I played against Noah. ABU breaks the rules multiple times during the Rochester draft, right? So the tensions are super high in this match. There were a lot of articles written about this match after the fact. Seth Byrne called it the worst judge match in the history of the Pro
so
Tour.
it's a 3-on-3
The
Rochester
three on
match.
three Rochester match, and it got the reputation for the worst judge match in the history of the Pro Tour.
And Rochester is just you do one pack at a time, face up.
Yeah,
Everyone
but
sees
everybody
what it
sees all the
takes.
picks, right?
Okay.
And we were like super unlucky because the one pick I can remember was I had to take a Flame Tongue Cavu first pick, which was the best card in the 75, but I gave Noah a Tangarth, right? Like so like the way that the pack rolled out, like we didn't get any packs like that where we could get like a super premium rare off a bounce. But like I took the best card in the pack and I was giving him like the second best card in the set.
Oof.
So
Yeah.
so I'm 1-1 against Noah going into game three, and I catch Noah mana stacking, right? So I'm like, I've got him, right? This
Yeah.
is this. So I am gonna do a favor for the entire Pro Tour, right? So at this point, there are six table judges. The tensions were so super high.
One per
There were
player.
literally six table judges. That is a lot of table judges. Okay. Um, so I'm going and I'm just like shuffling my deck. I'm not like I'm not doing anything to tip him off because I know Noah has stacked his deck, right? So I've written a lot of articles about how to stack your deck. So I'm like, I know he did it. So I just like pass. And then I wait for Noah to pass the deck to me. He passes the deck to me. The second he has his hand off the deck, I go, Jaw. And there is a level four French judge standing there, goes to reach for Noah's deck. Before he can touch the deck, Noah picks up his deck and does three riffle shuffles.
Ah,
Unreal, right?
nothing to see here.
Noah ends up winning the game. Like, that is unbelievable, right? If I put my finger on the deck and said judge, like, no question they're ejected from the Pro Tour, right?
Hmm?
So, so uh so the match comes down to BK against Benefel, and BK casts a spell without tapping his mana first. He has locked Benefel with no cards in hand off of Thunderscape Battle Mage and no permanents in play with Legacy Weapon.
Right.
This match is, I mean, it's over. We've got him, right? But then he casts a spell before tapping his mana first, and our team is disqualified.
That's a real relic of the past right
That is
there.
a real thing that happened.
That would not happen today.
Yeah,
So,
so but anyway, it's the worst called match in the history of
right.
the Pro Tour. So many procedural errors by the judges. Right, first of all, AB broke the rules a shit ton of times during the draft, and then like I literally caught my opponent mana stacking. He
Wow.
violated the pass deck, right? Like he probably should have been disqualified on picking up his deck and riffle shuffling on the pass deck.
Can you elaborate on the rationale behind the reason there was a rule that you cannot announce a spell without tapping your land first?
I think that there was like something about like how instance versus interrupts worked or something. I don't remember. It was like
Okay.
it,
Just seems
but
odd that that was
it
ever a
was
thing.
literally absurd. He had knocked him to nothing with Thornscape with a Thunderscape Battle Mage, no cards in hand, no permanents in play with Legacy Weapon, and we didn't get disqualified. We got a game loss, but it was a 1-1, so the game loss knocked us. It made us lose the match, right? So BK
Wow.
got a literal game loss, and so like we're like, how is this possibly penalty for game loss? And they're like, there's six table judges, and there was multiple warnings on the on the tables, but the warnings weren't ours. So
Oh,
like their team had a shit ton of warnings, so we accrued warnings by sitting there, right? It was really bad, right?
that's unreal. I think we've come
So
a long way
I
as
think
a Magic
yeah,
community.
I think I think we ended up like top 16, but I think we had a 3-0 from that spot to make top 8. So the funny thing was we finished higher than ABU in that tournament and won $1,000 more than them and used it to go out to dinner. But that was one, and then uh another one that happened, which was scummy. It was also a team tournament, ironically. Pro Tour Charleston in I want to say 2006. Um, I I went I think like 11-3 in this Pro Tour, which is if it were a regular Pro Tour, I would have been top 8, but it was a team Pro Tour, so I did not make top 8.
Oh, yeah.
But I called a judge on a Japanese player. I don't remember his name. I used to remember his name because, actually, there's another one that was pretty good. So, on a Japanese player, because I caught him stacking his deck, he appeals like 3 times, doesn't get disqualified. I found out later that on day one, Josh Ravitz and another American player had all called the judges on this same player for stacking. So I'm like, the likelihood that me, Josh Ravitz, who'd been trained by me, and then another American player who is can't remember who it is off the top of my head, but it's like a pretty good reputation American player, all called the same Japanese player for table stacking. Like the likelihood that he wasn't table stacking is basically zero.
And table stacking and just means this is mana weaving.
Yeah, mana weaving.
Okay, just
Yeah, so
making sure the lands are evenly distributed throughout the
yeah.
deck by
I mean,
mana.
I too owed him anyway, but but it was obviously that's seriously 3 different matches, right? It all happening. There was a Grand Prix in Boston where my friend Eric Taylor is playing 2 tables, playing 2 seats over. So like, let's say I'm at 3, he's at 5. I I out of the corner of my eye see that his opponent like I think palmed a card. Like so I called judge. His opponent concedes the game and gets up and leaves the table. It's
Oh,
hilarious. Before the judge even goes, like, I concede, which is like insanity, right? Right? Like
yeah.
that was a good one. Because because he knew what he had done, and like I saw it with the corner of my eye.
Great examples of scumminess. Yeah.
And then here's the one. This is the worst. When I was the editor of the dojo, this is like Pro Tour LA, I think 2000. I played against a French player and I had cast 2 gushes this game. So I should be 4 cards ahead. Middle of the game, like I count his deck and he's 2 cards ahead. And he cannot validate why he's 2 cards. I should be 4 cards ahead. I've cast 2 gushes this game, right? But
Hmm.
he's 2 cards ahead. I'm like, how is that, do you think? Like,
Yeah.
and so we held up the Pro Tour for 2 hours.
Wow.
I literally refused to accept like any of the rulings. I'm like, just tell me how he could be 2 cards ahead when I've cast 2 gushes, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't underdraw. Like this is how many land drops I have, right? Like,
Hmm.
and so what ended up happening is he appealed to Cyril Grelon, who was a French level 5, and eventually the ruling went against me. And I still, to this day, 25 years later, do not know how he could have been 2 cards ahead. Cyril says to me, I'll get you the next Pro Tour, which is fucking bullshit.
Wild.
I will get you next Pro Tour. And I was the editor of the dojo. Like you shouldn't fuck with me,
Yeah.
right? Like but yeah, let's see. But those are
Those are good. That's a good answer.
I'm
Those
like
examples. Yeah.
I try to think like, obviously those examples are burned into my skull or whatever.
Hmm.
Um and I mean I'm sure I did scummy things, but like okay, I mean here's one, right? So uh I won I kind of famously won uh the Utah the first like I think it's the second ever regional PTQ with the 5 color mono blue dragons deck. And
Okay.
one of the reasons that I won was that I played a bunch of cards that people didn't play. Um give me a second.
So you cards that people weren't expecting.
Yeah, like weird cards. Um and like Dragon Lord Dramica, Dragon Lord. People played Dragon Lord Ojutai, but they didn't play like a lot of ones. Like one of the most gratifying moments in my life was somebody sent me a video clip where this guy is like behind on the table. He's nothing, but he's just sitting there putting counters with Crucible of the Spirit Dragon on play, and then his opponent is like 115 cards in hand. He's like working with Tasigur and has like a handful of counter spells, and he just like runs the play like I said you should run it in the on the podcast I had at the time. Just takes all his counters um off of Crucible of Spirit Dragon, cast Dragon Lord Ramaka. His opponent can't counter any of his spells now. Cast Dragon Lord Kolagon, everybody gets haste. Cast Dragon Lord Silumgar, takes his opponent's best creature, and then attacks him once for the kill. Right,
Whoa.
his opponent's like 7 cards in hand, right? Like all counter spells, Tasigur, he's like working him. And I'm like, nah, you can't really lose any of these things. But Lanny says I'm fixated on end games, right? But I'm like, this is how you do it, right? Like, and you can't lose, just play for this play, right? So I won my top eight match. So I made top eight. I was first seed, and I was playing against traditional Esper Dragons, right? And so I'm like, this is a great matchup for me, right? So like at one point, my opponent tries to counter one of my dragons, and I have like Dragon Lord Dramica, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't do anything. And he goes to take
Oh,
his
so they
counter
just threw a
spell
card in
back,
the trash.
and
Yeah.
I'm like, you made a legal play. It
Yeah. I
just
don't know all
does.
these cards and we don't have to zoom in, but
Yep.
I get the gist. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, you made a legal play. It's just not legal, right? So, but what I did afterwards was, the big chase card at the time was Cyrillic, Dragon Lord Dramica, which is like the only Russian language card I think that exists, right? So
Okay.
I said, if I were to do it again, I would own 2 decks. I would have one all in Japanese, Chinese, Korean, or whatever, and then one all in like Cyrillic, Spanish, etc., so that nobody could ever read any of my cards, right? So this is how much edge I had playing American cards, right? Here's my Japanese, Chinese, whatever version, and here's like my Cyrillic Spanish, whatever version. So my default would be to play the Asian one, but if I got paired, like this is like my plan for the Pro Tour. If I got paired against an Asian player, I would play against like my Cyrillic Spanish one, right? So like no, so I would literally own two versions of the deck, bring 2 versions of the deck. None of them are readable to any player that I'd play against. So they'd have to Oracle ruling constantly, right? And they would like have to use like a ton of mental energy to do this. Because I had the experience of like beating someone with American cards. So like anyway, Sheldon Menery, RIP, said that this was like ingenious, incredibly scummy, but
Yeah.
perfectly legal, right? I didn't
Yeah.
actually do it. I just played Red Deck on the Pro Tour. But I was
Oh,
just
you
like,
didn't do it.
but I mean, if I were gonna play the Dragon Lord deck at the Pro Tour, which is the thing that I thought about, that was my plan. And I'm like, look, they printed all these cards for a reason, and that reason was because they wanted Michael J to be a Pro Tour champion.
I like that you can conceive of scummy plans and then not follow through on them. You can
I mean, that's a good
persist.
one, right? Like you have a whole
Yeah.
separate foreign language one if your opponent happens to be Asian. So yeah, so I mean that's the scummiest thing. That's the scummiest thing I thought of but never did.
Love it. So, I have a couple more. How are you doing on time?
Dude, just go. Just
just
go.
keep going. All right. What theme song would you like to be played at the start of each of your matches?
Eye of the Tiger.
Easy. All right. What block would be the most fun to add to pre-modern?
Oh, we should not add anything, dude.
All right, grade it.
I
Ain't
mean,
broke,
like
don't fix it.
Kamigawa is my go-to answer, but we should not add anything.
All right, yeah, let's not do that. So, uh, oh, this is relevant because there is an old school event coming up in August. So, what keeps you, Lanny, Lan, people from playing 93, 94 old school?
I don't have a spare $400,000.
All right, easy. And what, um, what's how are you planning to approach the event in August, which I believe is proxy friendly?
Is this a Matty Wan question?
I have no idea. No, he didn't ask that. Actually, just a friend from old school asked, who also loves the pod, asked this. Yeah.
So, only reason I'm going to put this in air quotes. The only reason I'm playing in the old school event in August is because Matt's going to give me his deck to play.
Okay, being handed a deck to play.
Yeah, so like he's just like, oh, you got to play my event, blah blah blah. I'm like, I don't know, man. I
Well,
don't
this
care.
obsoletes my next question about deck selection.
I I mean, here's the thing. Like, I macro have this idea that if I want to do anything, I want to do it well, right? So I don't do anything that I can't do well, right? So, or at least improve on. I guess I run multiple times a week and I'm not fast, but like, I used to be faster. But I I I it helps me optimize my body, right? I enjoy shooting archery, right? I'm better than I once was. But like Magic is so, you know, narrows to a point. Like, am I the best strategic pre-modern player in the world? No. There are players who are like way more strategically better. Am I the best technical player? I'm not the best technical player in the local community. Forget about that. But I enjoy it and I put a lot of brain power into it. I don't think I have enough brain power to be able. I do think I'm a really good standard strategic player, even though, that's
Mhm.
it's probably a weird thought process where like the population of standard is 6,000 times the population of pre-modern, but I would put myself in the top 10 standard theorists in the world, and I don't know that I would put myself in the top 10 pre-modern theorists in the world. Um, but I also play like way more standard than I play pre-modern. I don't have enough brain cells to also think about old school. That's really you can't do it all
Mhm.
well, you know?
No. And this is reminding me of a question about our match, the Enchantress versus Replenish match. If you're willing to revisit that, I was just curious, like going into a match like that where you know that according to the data, one deck is heavily favored. I mean, do you think that on any level you were maybe just running on autopilot there just because the numbers said like this is so good for you that maybe
No.
it's just in the bag?
No, the in game one, I only had two decisions that mattered, right? So one of them was once you played the Argothian Enchantress on turn two, that invalidated my mana leak, right? So
Mhm.
the question I had at that point was leaving up the mana leak for your turn three play or casting Seal of Cleansing. Those are two things. I'm like, the downside of casting Seal of Cleansing is if you have a naked Seal of Cleansing, which is a +1 card advantage, you can kill my Seal of Cleansing before it gets any action, which is what happened, right? So that was
It
one of my
was
two
annoying
choices.
because I also had the presence that I wanted to play on turn three, but I had to instead spend turn three playing a seal to take care of your
Yeah,
seal.
but like I'm increasingly bad if I leave up the mana leak, right? Because I'm like, all right, what if you play anything but a second Argothian Enchantress, I'm behind already, right? So that's why I played the seal. But you actually got a bonus on the seal. The other one was I didn't have a fourth turn land after my third land drop. I ended up drawing land like three turns in a row or something, but I didn't have one. The question was, I had two intuitions. I could have intuition for the nuts, right? Intuition for the nuts or intuition for
The ancient tombs. I was
no, for
surprised by
frantic
that.
search, right?
Oh.
I could intuition for frantic search, or I could intuition for the nuts, and I could try. And I just pray that the top of my library gives me a catalyst card. By the way, I need a land, right? So I don't
Mhm.
have a fourth land. But if I intuition for frantic search, I'm like, I don't know. Might be something to this, right? But I intuition for ancient tomb, which gave
Mhm.
me a setup. So I'm like, all right, I can get there in two turns if I go for the ancient tomb here, which is why I went for the ancient tomb. And then you punished me for it
I
by
just,
putting yourself in a
drew more than
situation.
half of my deck in one turn and
Yeah.
it totally popped off.
So
Yeah.
like if I had just gone for either frantic search or the nuts, and like so if I go for the nuts and I just draw frantic search, right? I'm like, and then I still need to draw land off the frantic search, right? Like
Hmm.
I would have beaten you then, right? But like I can't just I mean maybe I can. Maybe a better player is like if I play for the steady play, Steven will beat me with his average play. Right? Like that's one thing. I'm like, you have to stretch there, right? Like, and I didn't stretch. But in game one, those were my two decisions. Either I could have not played Seal Cleansing on turn two, or I could have intuition for the nuts, or either the nuts or Frantic Search instead of Ancient Tomb. I played for Ancient Tomb. I'm like, all right, I have Ancient Tomb. If he doesn't beat me, I can beat him now, right? But like, instead, you beat me, right? So, no, I certainly wasn't on autopilot, but I don't think most of the rest of my decisions mattered.
Okay. And yeah, I felt like another point of this match, I felt like I really had to respect your attunement, and I was often aggressively sealing your attunement. And I think in each game I may have sealed an attunement.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is to see what you would discard
Oh, the
so that I could figure out what's in your hand
the
and how I need to approach the game from there.
The attunement you sealed in game two was horror bad for me, right? Like it absolutely set me so far behind because like I needed that attunement for a setup turn, and then like my plan was to intuition for the nuts and then use the attunement to put it into the graveyard so that I could replenish you out. But being forced to use the attunement there while my mana was tapped, like made it so I couldn't do that line anymore, right? So what ended up happening, I think it was in game two, it's just like I just guessed wrong. And if I like if I just like put a different thing in my graveyard, I might have won, but I just drew a second parallax wave instead. So I just ended the
Mhm.
next turn with two parallax waves in play, and then you played three seals that turn, right? So if I had if I had guessed better, right, you know,
Yeah.
then I would have ended the turn with Opal Wave in play, maybe, right? And so yeah, that was I don't know if that's like a decision. I mean, I think I played it according to the math, and we're talking about n equals one. So
I noticed in round three for a minute I birded your game a game against Roland that you were playing, and I noticed Roland was respecting attunement as well, and that Roland suicide attacked his own
yes, this
meddling
was
mage, naming swords to plowshares into your board, which included a 3/3 attunement, right? So you have a meddling mage on counterspell, which he needs to plow to turn his counterspell. His hand clearly has plow and counterspell. As soon as he attacks, you know that his hand has both plow and counterspell because
yeah,
he's
but
attacking his mage on plow into your 3/3 attunement, and you just kind of like, I will block and kill that.
I'm like, oh no, that was as soon as I did it, I'm like, why am I doing this, right? Because
And-
Roland had previously stopped attacking with his meddling mage when I
Mhm.
played the attunement, which was a 3/3 creature, right? So
Yeah.
then he's just like doing his port and turn or whatever, right? Or like holding up whatever his interaction is, blah blah blah. And I land my meddling mage and I name counterspell. So Roland has previously um merchant scrolled for a foil, right? So I know he has foil in his hand, and I
Ah,
assume he's sandbagging an island. So I'm like, how many cards do you have in hand?
he's
So I'm
got
like,
foil counterspell and two plow and some other stuff.
yeah. So I'm like, all right, so I figured out what the rest of his hand is. So then, like, he sends his meddling mage, and I'm like, did he forget this is a three? This is literally the thought going in my head. He's like, did he forget this is a 3/3? But so I'm like, block, and I'm like, what am I doing? I can't lose if I don't block there,
Yeah.
right?
And it
My
happened so
hand,
fast. It was like
yeah,
he declared attack, you immediately pushed the attunement in front of it and
yeah.
said
I'm
block.
like, my hand has an abeyance and a mana leak,
Yeah.
right? I'm playing against one foil here, right? I cannot lose. Everything will be rolled up next turn if I just don't block. But
Ah,
I blocked, and then I'm like, oh, what am I doing? So we played like 1,000 more turns, and I eventually won. But like it was was so bad. It was bad because I assumed Roland was making a mistake, right?
not a good bet against a vintage and legacy
Against a
world
two-time
champion.
world champion. Yeah. So the two-time world champion did not suicide his 2/2 into my 3/3 for no reason, right?
Yeah.
So like I'm like, yeah, I should have, and I was at like 15. So like I could just take it, right? But like, yeah, I his hand, I'm like, all right, he's just got plows, counter spells, and one foil, right? And obviously my hand of like six must counter cards, an abeyance, and a mana leak is ahead against his hand of one foil, right? So anyway, I eventually won, but it was a lot of work.
That's good to hear. You came back from that. That I had to leave shortly after that. I didn't get to see the rest, but it looked like a good
And it
game.
was an epic. I considered just conceding the match because um in case Roland would be able to get into the top eight, but I think he was too far out.
Hmm.
Um
Let's see. So I think those are questions that I came prepared with. Anything else on your mind today?
no, I mean that thanks for all the questions. I was gonna tell the Roland story because like that was I mean, I don't know, like used to be like in the 90s, right? Like I would just always play against the player, right? So now I think like so much of the magic that I play is on MTGA, right? So I play against the deck instead of against the player. But like there used to be such a huge skill gap, and Roland's probably better than I am, right? So like the idea that this chain of events starts with Roland is making a clear blunder on the battlefield is a mistake on my part, right? So, um, but anyway, yeah, that was a comedy of errors, and I did not deserve to win from that spot.
You know what I learned last night I didn't know before? Do you know with what deck did Roland win the Legacy World Championships in 2006?
Delver?
Well, no, because Delver was printed in what?
Oh, I don't
2011.
know. Oh, so I don't know what deck.
So it was Blue Green Madness.
Oh,
It's almost entirely a pre-modern deck, with the exception of there's two Jits in the main, which just don't shouldn't exist. But then it also has like Force Brainstorm and Tropical Island with fetches, right? But other than that, it
Force
looks
Brainstorm and Tropical Island, you say, but that doesn't
yeah.
change the deck at all.
But
Uh,
these Creature Suite, the rest of the spells are pretty close. The Aquamoeba, Wild Mongrel,
So it was, yeah, so
Lizards,
Aquamoeba, not
uh,
sort of survival band.
Arrogant Worm. He just was not playing survival. He was just choosing to just punch him in the face.
Wow, wait a second.
Survival was not banned for many years after that.
What if I played Blue Green Madness from my side of the bracket? Let me think about this for a second. That's
Okay.
good against Lance Hole range. When I say good, that means it's a non
It's
auto
good
lose.
when it doesn't just lose to its own mana base.
That's my
Asterisk, because it's a blue-green deck.
that's my problem with Blue Green Madness. You need your first land to be an island, and then you need every subsequent land to be a forest.
Because you need to cast Counterspell too. It's really a challenge without the drops. I I like to believe that there's room out there for another community run format that runs like Revised to Scourge and has duels. It basically simulates the legacy of the past.
So I would have to collect all the I mean I used to own more than a full set of duels, but I loaned them out for a Worlds one year and didn't
What if
get a
there was
lot
a
of them
play group
back.
that was totally proxy friendly and they just handed you 40 proxy duels?
Yeah, but you know that that's not how I'm going to play, right? Like it's going to be a massive drain on my bank account. I'm like pretty happy of the situation I'm in that like maybe buy one standard deck a year and I spend the rest of my Magic budget on pre-modern on volume of pre-modern decks and glamming up some of the decks.
Yeah. I don't I think there's room out there for such a format, and I'm going to continue to think on it, but we certainly don't have to go down that rabbit hole right now. But I think all I need to do is come up with some example decks, put up a website with some pictures of pretty decks and some rules, and then that's all
You're
you got to do to make a format, right? It's like making a cryptocurrency. People just bang these things out these days.
well, I think that you've got something there, man. I mean, that's what Martin Berlin did, and look at where we are now.
Yeah. So
This is the thing that I'm wondering about. What if Martin Berlin makes a decision that people don't like? Like, what if he decides that, like, we're going to unban Necropotence and Will? Are we going to be in an old school situation where people just stop listening to Martin Berlin? Like,
and it splinters.
yeah,
Yes, the
that is
splinter
I
format.
think that might happen, right? If he makes a decision people don't like. Right now, we are all playing by the same rules. The old
Gotcha.
school community is not.
I'll have my format laying in wait for that moment.
I would love to play. I say this in air quotes. Like, I would love to play modern before fire design, right? So I think that
Mhm.
like uh Fran was promulgating, but he stopped streaming as much, right? So, but he was
There's
promulgating,
a website that exists for this.
yeah, like
I think it needs a new name.
pre-fire or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
But I think like that would be like way would become inbred in a way that pre-modern hasn't yet, right? Because I'm like, oh, I can just play burn, or like I own a lot of these cards.
Right. The other thing, it's very directly recreating a format that existed. I mean, with a slightly different ban list. Whereas pre-modern is like this pool never existed
Oh
together.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like the parallax
Love
cards were
that.
never intended to play the way that they were, and they didn't.
Oh, yeah. Also, there's this. This is a theme that keeps coming up in conversations recently, is that yeah, the parallax cards are kind of bullshit.
Yeah, Dreadnought's bullshit too.
Yeah.
Most of the best cards are bullshit.
There are some of the quote pillars of the format are just mistakes that weren't supposed to work the way they do now.
Dude, Fire Blast is bullshit. You think
Oh,
Fire
strong
Blast is
words coming from you.
Fire Blast? So Fire Blast was the big bad at one point. When Fire Blast was originally in playtest, I want to say it was return two mountains to your hand, deal three.
Okay.
And so the
Oh, like
version
gush.
that was yes, sacrifice two mountains, deal four was never developed. It was like the playtest version was, I think, return two mountains, deal three. And they were like, oh, I'm not sure if they thought that was too good or I mean, obviously sacrificing lands is worse than returning two to your hand, right? So they're like, I can't remember if it was not good enough or
Yeah.
not exciting enough.
Threshold. They didn't know threshold
Yeah.
was going to exist, and it would be
So
advantageous to put cards in your graveyard.
so the big scary is I do not believe that the sacrifice two mountains deal four was ever developed. There was not at that point discrete design and development teams. In fact, the development, I'm putting this in air quotes, was done by exterior playtest teams, which were pro teams. So pro teams got cards that they play they fulfilled the role of the development team for WotC, which is also disadvantageous for everyone who's trying to play in the pro tour who wasn't on one of the pro teams that had access to these cards. So um, yeah, that was one. And then I went to the University of Pennsylvania undergrad, which is where Magic was created. So my play group was deeply intertwined with Richard Garfield's original playtest group. So I was like my formative years playing Magic were with that group. And so um I have a very different perspective, I think, on how Magic cards were or
Right.
should be
Fire
created.
Blast, I think, is really similar in my mind to Force of Will, even more so than Pyrokinesis, even though Pyrokinesis is from the same set as Force of Will, but it's a more powerful version of an effect, and it's both Force of Will and Fire Blast, you're just really cheating on mana. It's like Force of Will is like, I would like to take this random blue card in my hand and turn it into an instant speed Black Lotus, and with this Lotus, I would like to cast a counterspell.
You're
Infinite mana.
articulating in a way that people didn't have language for in 1997, I promise you. Right.
Okay.
So when Bounty of the Hunt came out, Brian David Marshall declared that card advantage was no longer a thing.
Oh,
Right. So, and that was, a,
turns out Bounty of the Hunt is no longer a thing.
but when Bounty, it's not even a thing. Like, he was just pointing at cards like Rogue Elephant and Bounty that like we had done such an exchange of speed for card advantage at that point that it wasn't going to be a thing anymore. But I was, I didn't become friends with Brian Weissman until after Brian Weissman was no longer a Pro Tour competitor, right? So I think like in the 2000s, probably he started just random messaging me and I developed my relationship with Brian Weissman in like the early aughts. But
Mhm.
I was an adherent of his philosophies from around 1995 when I first read about them. And I was just very like, if you understand the concept of card advantage and the there was no YouTube streaming at this point, right? So people didn't necessarily understand some of those things. You had and whatever our play group was like an 8-person group game at a cafe, right? So
Mhm.
having some of these understandings was like made you fundamentally so much stronger than the players you were up against typically, right? So I was just
Right.
like, yeah, this whole concept of like a hymn to Torah as a 2-for-1 was the first way that I learned it,
Yes.
and then there were other kinds of 2-for-1s. It's like I came to understand that like you won a lot of games with your Hymn to Torah 2-for-1s, especially if you drew more than one Hymn to Torah. But the people who were James Day toming 2-for-1, they would outlast you, right? And they could get their Moat 2-for-1 and their James Day tome 2-for-1, right? Like, and those guys would outlast you, and they could just point all of their Swords of Plowshares against your Hypnotic Specters and Sengir Vampires, and you would
Mhm.
never damage them, right? And so I was just like,
Right.
this is really powerful because for me, the first tournament I ever won was just on the back of Dark Ritual Hypno. They let you play with for Hymn to Torox, and I was just like, this is my tournament winner. I won a tournament last summer with this. This is undefeatable. I
Mm.
think I had a Black Vice in that deck because you had to play Black Vice. It was restricted. And for the racks, like I think that's as disparate as a strategy might go. But then I would like play against Mr. Suitcase, if people understand what Mr. Suitcase is, right? Um, and Mr. Suitcase had like James Day Tome and Moat and Ancestor Recall,
Card advantage.
and I was a child, right? So child with my hippie Hymn to Torok deck, and he was outlasting me, or
Right.
they had
I would
the
like to two for one
Abyss,
myself to make a 2/2 creature. And
or I
he's
meant
like, great.
the Abyss SWB. I'm like, they had
Yeah.
so much more card advantage, and like I would win only because my card advantage was so bursty, right? And then, that was Mr. Suitcase taught me a lot.
Hmm.
So I never got off of that, right? So I'm still like, uh, the Eric Taylor philosophy, which is that basically every tournament level player understands how to get card advantage when they're supposed to get card advantage, right? The
Hmm.
players who are good get card advantage in situations where they're not supposed to get card advantage,
Ooh,
right? And
I like
so
that one.
I'm always looking for where I can get the 2-for-1. Sometimes that's wrong, like especially increasingly we trade card advantage for speed, like
Right. Sometimes you think, I'm going to let the Dreadnought resolve and then try to answer it and get a 2 for 1. But no, you
my
counter the
philosophy.
Dreadnought.
I could have a whole podcast on how to play against the card Phyrexian Dreadnought. I
Yeah.
used to think so many things about Phyrexian Dreadnought. Now I respect Phyrexian Dreadnought too much to think any of these things now. Phyrexian Dreadnought that card is bullshit. These cards are bullshit. Hermit Druid, Phyrexian Dreadnought, Parallax Tide,
Mhm.
Parallax Wave, mm,
Phyrexian,
Stifle.
Phyrexian Devourer, also bullshit.
Phyrexian Devourer is also bullshit. Fire Blast, Survival of the Fittest. If your deck is good, it probably has cards that are bullshit in
Oh,
it.
you put Cradle and Sanctum in there too, because they're basically just better than Black. They're essentially like Black Lotus. They just show up later in the game, and they might make 6 or 8 mana, right? It's they're
I
totally nuts.
imagine we played 4 games this week. Imagine you didn't play Sarah Sanctum in any of the 4 games. By the way, you played Sarah Sanctum in all 4 of the games, right?
Yeah, multiple.
Imagine you didn't play Sarah Sanctum in any of those games. How many of them do you think you win?
Fewer, definitely, definitely.
Definitely not 4, right?
It
You
was
know?
very important for me to cheat on mana to establish the waves, or the Sanctums allowed me to literally draw half my deck in a turn, combined with all the Enchantress effects. So yeah, it was
Uh,
pretty crucial.
no, I'm not saying like it was bullshit that you won. I'm just saying like the card is disproportionately powerful,
Oh, I
right? Like,
understand
yeah.
what you're saying. Yeah, there are certain cards that are just either. So that to me is like an example of a power outlier in the format, where some of the first cards we cited as bullshit are like cards not functioning as intended.
Oh, I see. Oh, then you have to,
There's power outliers, and then there's
yeah, okay.
why is this? This shouldn't be.
All right.
Yeah.
Phyrexian Devourer, yeah, that's a good. I mean, like, look at
Right.
Hermit Druid though, man. People used to have basics in their deck.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, what a cool card advantage engine.
Oh, I could just get a land every turn and maybe cast a Living Death. Wouldn't that be neat?
A few years ago, I made a deck that was like Krovikan Horror, Hermit Druid, Icarid, Wild
Yeah.
Mongrel, and I'm like survival of the fittest. I'm like I'm gonna survival for Icarids, right? Like no one plays Icarid, right?
No one plays Icarid in pre-modern,
Yeah.
correct?
So like Icarid's legal, right? Like am I
It
misremembering
is.
this?
You can
Yeah.
do
So
that. You can do Ashen Ghoul, Krovikan Horror, all these
oh, maybe
effects,
it
right?
wasn't Icarid. Maybe it was Ashengool. So yeah, I think maybe it was Ash. I think it was Ashengool, not Icarid. Sorry, I'm not sure if Icarid's
You can put
legal
them all
though.
in the same deck and do some
So
powerful things,
yeah,
right?
I made Hermit Druid, Wild Mongrel, Survival of the Fittest, Ashengool, right? Coughing Horror, and I'm like, I mean, it's just like that deck is just not nearly fast enough, right? Like you're doing a cool thing, right? But like among survival decks, like what turn am I killing? 5? Like I have a great draw. I kill on turn 5. Like that's just
Right. And you're building it so that you mill your entire deck and then you like Crows and Wreck
no,
to not draw out, right?
I'm building it to like get cool attacks with my
Yeah.
prop whatever with my Ashen Ghoul and my like I think it's cool to like have a Wild Mongrel and an Anger because I have to have a mountain in my deck,
Got it. So
right?
you're building it, you want to make land drops. Your
Yeah,
Hermit
and
Druid is
then
eventually
like
going to hit a basic land and stop. It's not going to mill your whole deck
yeah,
in
and then
one
like
activation.
I get a mountain, I discard my Icarid, like or whatever, my Ashen Ghoul to my Wild Mongrel, attack you for a ton. Like
Yeah.
that's my whole thought. I'm like, this is pretty cool. I'm like, okay, the Elves deck literally beat me 2 turns ago, right? Like your Enchantress deck is never gonna lose to this shit, right? You're just like okay, that's all you've got, Opal Wave, right? Like and like my deck's all non-basic lands and also wins fairly. Non-basic lands plus wins fairly overlap is pretty bad against burn, right? Like, so like this is just like the pile of ideas that it can't go anywhere.
Huh. That I think that deck can exist as like a one shot. You just mill the whole deck, and then you have like a legacy weapon and Crows and Wreck so that you don't die to not drawing a card. But then you put 4 Icarids and a bunch
Yeah,
of other
yeah.
creatures
So
directly
it
into
was
play, right?
pretty explosive, right? Like if your opponent's not interacting with your graveyard, it's like very powerful. Like it's also like at the time, like my frame of reference is decks that are trying to control the opponent with counter spells and swords to plowshares, or like trying to like interact on the battlefield with, lightning bolt or lightning rift, right? Like if you're playing against that, like the recurring haste of Ashen Ghoul is quite potent. Like, and the other thing is like just untapping with a Hermit Druid is terrifying for most players, right? So like I literally have a mountain in my deck, right? So that I can anger. Like, but it's just so not fast enough. Like that's the thing, right? Like you, maybe I win on turn 5 and you know, I don't know, it's just not good. Like you can't be one of these decks that's just like, I'm gonna win fair a turn slower than like what is the fairest deck? Burn? Burn's uncontested win is turn 4.
Burn is pretty fair.
Yeah, right. Like, so like I mean land still. I mean, I guess land still's
Fight me.
uncontested win is like. Yeah, okay. I don't know. These are decks I would never play.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, no offense, so Derek likes White Weenie, right? I lost to White Weenie so many times in the last year. I lost to it at LobsterCon Day 2. I lost to it at I went to the Connecticut guys, the
The
Tolarian
Flippy is
PTA.
fair. The Rock. The Rock is fair.
Oh man, I played the Rock and PSS. That was the only match I lost the match. I'm like, finally sleeving up the Rock. Let's go. And I lost that one for I think I started that match 2-0 and I lost the best of five against
Oh,
Lanny.
best of five.
I won the first two. Fuck the Rock, SWB.
I thought the takeaway was fuck best of five. Okay, fuck the
Well,
Rock.
yeah, fuck the Rock, right? So, but I'm just saying, like, the fair deck is like burn. It's uncontested win is turn four. Like, I can't have a deck that's like fair uncontested win turn five, and people might have cards like Gaia's Blessing, Tormod's Crypt, etc. It's just not good enough, right? Like the
Hmm.
Lan has ideas, and his ideas are different, and like a lot of the time they're good enough, like this idea isn't good enough. Like the first pre-modern deck I made was like blue green oath, and like my model was I'm going to start with land still, replace Wrath of God with oath, and add thawing glaciers, right? Like it's pretty good the first couple meetups I played. I I almost won two meetups with it, but like that deck's just not good enough, right? Like the the oath decks that have survived are, they're like I said, it's not optimizing. They're specializing. Like they restrict the opponent's ability to play Magic in a way that I was just like everybody's doing what they want, but I have an Oath of Druids in play, right? Like that's the
Right. A lot of my first time meeting Derek and playing was like an Oath of Druids, more similar to Bob Maher Oath.
yeah.
Where it's just not stopping me enough from doing what I want to do. Unlike Red Green Oath, Green White Oath, which, by the way, are also, I think, possibly reasonable choices, at least from my side of the bracket.
I'm not playing Oath into land, right? Land's range includes
No, because then he's gonna be on Hoth and he's just gonna
Hoth, Replenish, and
got
Devourer are all good against traditional, right?
mm.
Like
Yeah, it's not good on your end of the bracket. No.
imagine he's on Devourer. He has like 3 to 4 main deck Sabos Web. Like that's a disaster for me.
Yeah, yeah, you're not playing that deck. No,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, every deck, like every regular deck is a non-option for me, right? I literally have to do because the problem is Lan has me, every deck that Lan could conceivably play has the good decks covered. That's the thing, right? Like, let's say you're like, okay, 12-12 can beat anything, but like, let's say he's just like, all right, I'm on Devourer with 4 Xantid Swarm,
Hmm.
right? Like, I kind of have to win on the second turn, right? Like, even if I do, if he's like first turn Xantid Swarm and he just attacks me and he just combo kills me on the turn that I like, I still need 3 turns to kill him from my combo turn just attacking with 12-12s. If he just connects with Xantid Swarm once, I'm dead, right? Like,
Yeah, that sounds really
that's
tough.
really terrible, right? Like if you're just like, okay, 12-12 is the go-to, it can beat anything. It's bad against Hoth. And if it's just like me on 12-12, land on replenish, I mean, like, I guess I'm going first. That's like not a great matchup, right? Like maybe I'm 55-45
Being
against
first
him.
seed, Dreadnought, and having the possibility to just high roll people with the Dreadnought nut draws is kind of appealing because you're always on the play 2 out of 3 games of any match.
Yeah, but I think there's just no chance Lan isn't going to play a deck that has Dreadnought covered. His
Oh,
like
you're right.
paradigm in life is to start with decks that have Dreadnought covered.
Yeah, yeah, cover the big players. That's
Right? Like even his Stompy deck has 12 anti-blue cards, right? He's got like Rushwood Legate, like Carp, I don't know, like
right. In the after
four
sideboarding, he brings in
Crumble
4 Legate and 4 Hidden Gibbons and something
and like
else.
three Crumble and like four Naturalize, right? Like,
He goes, yeah, he brings in 2 additional Naturalize and 2 Crumbles, I think. Yeah.
yeah, so like even Stompy, he's literally got like Hidden Gibbons and Legate, right? Just no mercy for 12-12. You just can't go that direction. Right? So
Fair.
like I mean, let's could go red deck. Red deck is pretty good against a wide part of his range, actually. Maybe that's the right answer.
Red deck, 23 and me, those stand out.
Red deck and 23. But the thing that red deck and 23 and me have in common is that they can both attack a wide swath of the metagame. Right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know. I guess
So
those be what I think about.
here's just one other. thought, kind of adjacent to things we talked about, like Enchantress and Dreadnought, come to my mind as maybe the decks that draw the most cards in the format.
That's Enchantress.
Enchantress, right? And
Yeah.
then Dreadnought's up there when it's doing its gush thing, and Enchantress is definitely the most. But uh, two decks I've played recently and really enjoyed, and they stand out from all the other decks I've played, like the old like Oath and various Terrageddon decks, because they draw so many cards. And also these decks were in the finals of LobsterCon. So coincidence, the two decks that draw the most cards made it to the
I
finals of the biggest event.
I made a deck I thought it was pretty good. It was based on one of your decks, but it was like meaningfully different. I was just like, this deck has a 0% chance of beating Hother Stasis.
Hmm.
That's the conclusion I came to. I'm like, that's a bad league finals deck, right? So like
I
probably
actually
good against a lot of decks that are not going to be the matchups that I have.
I've been thinking the green white Oath deck looks really strong, but it wants Naturalize or Ray of Rev, and like so it could cut at least four of the LD spells to have like a broader removal suite.
My idea was the you remember the deck that you played against me when I was playing Beefcake, and then you were like second turn
This
Exalted Angel?
Oh, not the Storm deck against Beefcake.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Terra. Yeah, the it did like City Traders, Mox
City,
Diamond,
yeah, City
Exalted
Traders that
Angel.
deck. So I was going to start on that deck, blue
Yeah.
splash instead of red splash.
Hmm.
So kind of a null meddling mage instead of red splash. But the big innovation was going to be to cut all the Armageddons
Hmm.
for Cataclysm. Right. So it's a little bit
Only
worse.
Cataclysm.
Yeah.
Way better against Enchantress.
A little bit worse against blowing up all the lands. Substantially better against elves. Like
Elves,
that
it
was the
fixes
big
your
thing.
elves, goblins, and
Yeah.
Enchantress matchups. I
So
like
that
it. At the
that
cost of sometimes you blow up two of your Mox Diamonds
yeah,
or
but
you lose a creature.
that was like my big conceptual leap. But the problem is, I think that like I'm never beating Hoth, right? That deck's probably pretty bad. Like that deck is particularly bad against the meaty part of lands range. But that's the
Right. Are you still playing Wayfarer?
yeah,
Yeah.
same
Same
structure as your
structure.
deck. Main changes are blue splash instead of red splash, Cataclysm instead of Armageddon. That
I
was the
like
big thing.
that. And
Yeah.
Blue Splash is where I landed for LobsterCon, but I didn't take it so far as all Cataclysms, but I did swap one Armageddon for one
Yeah.
Cataclysm for LobsterCon, and then I had an additional one in the sideboard, which at least let me steal a couple games from, but not matches from Elves players.
Yeah, so but like anyway, my point being if you have four Cataclysm, I think that you are in a way better spot against elves. Way
And
better spot against goblins,
at that
and
point, does the Esper Gush Cataclysm deck appeal to you?
no.
No. Okay.
I want I look the thing that's impressive to me about I consider that deck a combo deck, right? So the what I came away with when you were beating me all those times is that you're a combo deck. You are a City of Traders Exalted Angel combo deck, or you are a Terravor Armageddon combo deck,
Yeah.
right? If you're gonna play like the Esper version and you're just like oh, I have like 47 different plans, like I don't want those. Give me this combo or this combo, right?
Yeah. Permanent
And
based combo,
yeah,
one,
and
two
like
knockout punch.
if this combo lands, your opponents, they're not dead immediately, but they are in a lot of trouble,
Yeah,
right?
they got a couple turns.
Versus I gotta play 100 turns with like these weird permanents in play. Like I'm just gonna be in a situation where I block my opponent's meddling mage that is actually turning off his own swords to plowshares. I don't want to be in that spot. I
No, never again.
just put some brass knuckles on my hand, punch to the face. Let's
Yeah.
go to our next round. I'm not smart enough.
Okay, so no 23 and me.
Yeah,
Because it's
so
that deck's not
maybe.
punching anyone in the face, right? It's kind of
I
lulling them to sleep.
oh well, I mean, For Sabo's web is pretty good against Chris Cruz maybe and Land maybe though.
Yeah.
A
So,
shit ton of counterspells is definitely good against Land. There's no part of Land's range that the counterspell part of 23 and me isn't good. And the guy's blessing part of it's pretty good.
mhm. I had, oh, one last question.
Yeah.
Survival Madness plays Counterspell, has four squeeze. Why not just play Forbid instead?
It was instead of what?
The Counterspell.
Costs 100,000 mana.
It costs three. And then you have squeeze. You just buy it back forever.
This is like my LobsterCon 2022 deck.
You thinking like you're never going to need to cast it that many times because you're going to close the game out.
I
So
think
you
it's one of those
bother.
things that like if this is the game plan that I'm on, I'm not. Like I don't want to build that game plan in, right? Like I'm super fine with things that are there, and then I get to access this game plan without. But adding forbid to your deck is a statement. It's a three
Yeah.
casting cost counterspell with
What's a real
Take,
statement?
double
Yeah.
blue pips, right?
This
Like,
idea floated to me by Andy Vollmer recently, and I thought it was at least worth thinking about.
so I had a different idea, which is like, what about this one? It's a little clunky, so I haven't developed it. Four intuitions, 3 to 4 squee, and then like a shit ton of exploits. Peace of mind. When was the last time you saw peace of mind?
It's been a while.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of decks who could just never beat peace of
White
mind.
one enchantment, white
Yeah,
discard a card, gain
gain
3 life.
3. Yeah, he was never beating my peace of mind squee. 3 to 4 Masticore, 3 to 4 peace of mind. By the way, if you have too many peace of mind, you just discard them to forbidden
Are
Masticore,
you gonna play
right?
lizards too? Discard your lizards, get them for free,
Oh,
like
is it?
Basking Rootwalla.
No, I was my deck idea was blue white.
Well, you never
Um,
cast a lizard for mana.
yeah, so but I'm like peace of mind, Masticore, intuition, squee, AK.
Yeah.
Right. So like all the cards that have discard disadvantages, there's just no discard disadvantages. I was just like, I
Hmm?
could theoretically like go to green and just play Dawn Walker. Is that the name of it? Dawnbringer.
Yeah.
It's green one, discard fog.
Yeah.
Right. So like I think that there's like a bunch of people could
Right.
never crack this deck, but like I'm like, I don't know. I literally think there's just like you can't lose if you get peace of mind in play some matchups.
Say blue white.
Yeah.
Black is an easy splash in those colors, so zombie infestation could go too. It's another thing to do with squeeze.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, like, this deck is probably incredibly bad against any amount of graveyard hate, though. So, like, if your opponent has like a Phyrexian Furnace, which is a thing people play, right? You're just like, okay, well, my deck sucks.
This is why
Like,
you sideboard in your null rods, then you're fine.
so I turn off my Massacores, but I guess it's not that bad. But come on, SWV, this is terrible, right? Like, I'm
Mm,
investing so many cards into this engine, and it is literally cold to like a Withered Wretch.
gotcha. So you think maybe it's one of those things where you take it to a meetup, it does its thing once. Maybe it was worth it just to do it that one time because it was so glorious. And maybe you won two,
Yeah.
but you still did the thing once.
But it is pretty cool though, right?
Yeah.
Conceptually, like peace of mind. Like seriously, I can just imagine sitting there like peace of mind squee. Beat me.
Yeah.
Come on, beat me. What do you got?
Yeah.
Nothing. That's what I thought.
Yeah. That'll be fun against a lot of decks. And then some
Yeah.
decks just won't care about your life total.
Yeah, and you could just attack them with Masticore.
Yeah.
I love
Well,
having Masticore with no drawback, right? And you can forbid in that deck, But like also decks like that are just so bad against other people's plan A. Just like what if your opponent's plan A is just like Arcane Lab, right? Like presumably they can just operate at the same and they're doing something better than a 4/4.
I've been playing this format and its sister format for, 5, 6 years. I've never met anyone whose plan A was Arcane Lab.
Landy Ho, you've never met?
I've never ran into Lan when that was his plan A. I must have missed this era of Lan.
Landy Ho tapping out for an Arcane Lab against a 12/12 player is just like,
Uh,
okay, I guess that happened.
that sounds
Go-
great. Yeah.
You can't lose anymore, right? Like they're now on Vision Charm plan. You will clearly beat them with Manlands and Manlands and Decree of Justice well before they can
Right.
Vision Charm you
Because
out.
you're never going to let them chain a vapor your lab.
Yeah, like never happens, right? Like they can cast one spell a turn. You just all and he's just like, if I leave up a forbid, I can just never lose. I'll attack you with like Fairy Conclave 20 times or 10 times.
Arcane Lab feels underplayed.
It's also good against red. People don't realize like it seems weird that it'd be good against red, but like red's game plan against like control decks is to overload their ability to counterspell.
Save it for a
So
one big turn.
yeah. So if you just like tap out for Arcane Lab and it sticks and they don't kill you, you can now answer every card that they have 1 for 1. Like that is insane, right? Like like they don't resolve everything. They just resolve the last Fire Blast, right? Like no, one at a time. Bring it, right? Like it's really hard, especially and then all of a sudden your cards like Chill Warmth and Cop Red become unbreakable. Like once you
Mhm.
have an Arcane Lab and another hate enchantment, they can never win.
What
Like
are the implications of Arcane Lab in or against Stasis?
I mean, no one was doing anything anyway.
Probably Stasis would rather have it, right? you wouldn't want to play it against Stasis because they're happy with that. I'm just thinking this live. I haven't given this any thought ahead of time.
Yeah, Stasis doesn't cast any spells.
They just don't care.
Yeah.
And they're happy because it makes their Black Vice potentially better, right? You
Yeah.
can't. Okay. Okay. I was just thinking about it in the context of the top eight bracket in the decks we expect. Arcane
Yeah,
Lab.
but that's one you could try. Arcade, like that's a Landy Ho special, right? Like two Phyrexian Furnace main, two Arcane Lab in the sideboard was what he was playing. This is before you moved to New York, I think. Or maybe you were in New
Was
York, but you
this
weren't playing with
Land's
us.
first Spike Colony appearance? Did he talk about this?
I don't know, man, but he
Sounds familiar.
fucking ranched. And I'm like, I wish why didn't you he's like, I gave you this before LobsterCon. You could have played this deck instead of the shitty deck you played. And but I didn't listen to him. I was wrong.
Ah,
Yeah, two Furnace main, two Arcane Lab side. I played it religiously for like, I don't know, 3 months after that.
powerful card. One of those cards where you look at it, it's not immediately obvious. You
It
just start
turns
to
off
hit.
Dreadnought. Like
Yeah.
it's end of statement.
Well, I'll go soon. Before we wrap up, is there anything on your mind with regards to there's a Winamax tomorrow at the Bearded?
We're both playing.
Yeah, I do believe I'm going.
Are you gonna play Enchantress again?
I really haven't figured out what I'm going to play.
I'm gonna bring Elves and Replenish. I'm leaning towards Elves because I don't think I can play Elves in the playoff. Like just from based on what you're talking about. So I'm like, Replenish, I could maybe play. I'd have to think about it. But like, I think, what are the best decks I've had recently? My most successful deck recently is actually Red Deck. I won a league with it 1 week.
Yep.
Um, but I have a ton of X1s with Replenish in the last couple of months. So including this week. So maybe Replenish. Um, I won the first bearded that I played in with elves, so
Oh.
that's kind of on my radar.
My understanding is the last one of these Winamax was at Comp REL, which took some people by surprise. You got a lot of people in pre-modern community who maybe
Yeah, well,
aren't completely on top
some
of.
of us know how to play in a tournament.
Do we know if that's what this is going to be?
No idea. It's not going to
Okay,
change how
because
I
I just
play.
it makes me lean towards a deck that I have more familiarity with if it's going to be Comp REL, because I'm just less likely to miss sequence or make some dumb mistake than a
Yeah,
deck
but
that I've just recently
nobody's gonna
picked up.
if you're like loose on and let's say we were playing for the mocks, right? Me and you are playing for the mocks. I still wouldn't call you on something if you made a procedural on your Enchantress deck, right? Like I literally wouldn't do it. So like I don't know how other people are gonna feel about something like that, but like I wouldn't do it. So and I'm the biggest asshole.
Just, just one of those good things to clarify up front with your opponent. Be on the same page. Like, hey, if you make a mistake, I'm calling you for it, and I expect you to do the same for me or not. I think it can be helpful.
Here's the thing, I'm so out of practice on that. Like, me 10 years ago would have been like, yeah, freezing rules.
Yeah,
But
you don't have to
like,
have that conversation 10 years ago because everyone's cutthroat. There's
there's
like a
some
weird
freezing
mistrigger
rules.
rule that everyone's abusing. It's just a
I mean, me
time.
10 years ago was finishing in the money on the Pro Tour. So like that version is probably better at Magic than this version. So but I mean this version is having more fun, I think.
There you go. So who's really winning?
That version. That version was on the best team in the world, was traveling across the country like with innovative decks, like yeah, this version is like playing meme goblins decks and taking deck picks with secret layers art
Traveling to
picks.
New Jersey.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, both plan to play. So I'm very likely to play elves tomorrow because I don't think I can play it in the top eight. But I think my other deck that I might play is replenish. Do that with what you will.
Yeah. I'm zero to play elves because it's unsleeved right now. So I'll figure
So
something else out.
probably don't play stasis then because I think even I can navigate the elves versus stasis matchup if it's me and you.
Yeah, I do. Maybe someday. Maybe someday I'll feel like sleeving up a meme deck and I'll try Stasis out.
I love how you think stasis is a meme deck. That's literally Rich Busey's go-to weapon of choice.
Yeah, I just threw that in there to give him a little jab.
Lan thinks it's a meme deck for sure. He told me he doesn't think it's a real deck.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not generally not scared of it.
You
But
beat me so bad. It's like,
the funniest game I had against Stasis in a league recently was I was on Dreadnought and I wasn't planning to do it this way, but I was on the draw, and just my first several hands just didn't function. So I ended up mulliganing to four, which I thought was really great against the Black Vice deck. And it worked out.
Here's
It
the thing
all
about here's the
got
thing
there.
about Black Vice I think people get wrong. Like, I think Selden Black Vice me at LobsterCon when we were playing the blue white mirror match.
Wow.
I decided I thought that Black Vice was bad. But like in order to get under the Black Vice, I limited my own ability to be flexible the rest of the game. So like at some point, like he's trying to resolve cards with a 7 card hand, and I'm trying to defend with a 4 card hand. Right?
There's
At
the
some
value.
point that's gonna bite you.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing about Black Vice that I think like people are like, oh, you can get under the Black Vice, it doesn't beat you. Yeah, but it kind of beats you 10 turns from now because it's 7 against 4.
Well, you know me, I'm a big Black Vice fan.
You should tell you what, SWB, play Stasis tomorrow, see how that goes.
Okay, I'll give it a thought. Thank
All
you.
right.
And thanks for your time today.
Dude,
Good to
this was
chat.
awesome. Appreciate it.
All right,
All
take
right.
care.
Bye.